who you wouldn't expect to have this position. Wasn't Bill O'Reilly one of the most active advocates of the notion that life in prison without parole is a much more a severe punishment
I don't know.
than death penalty? I think I'm right.
I don't
about
know.
That.
But just one last thing before we get to the calls at 877-301-8970. It's an old book now and an old movie. But Dead Man Walking, Sean Penn and Susan Sarandon were in it. It was a 1995 movie. The book is really great. It's by this nun, Helen Prejean.
Didn't we interview her a bunch of years ago?
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay. We did, John says.
Oh,
she was on the show.
We both did. Okay, we both did. But anyway, she looks at the notion that the death penalty gives closures to victims' families and found that to be quite untrue, that you don't get the person that you lost back. And by the way, in the Tsarnaev case, the marathon bombing, the family of Martin Richard did not want the death penalty carried out in his case, but the courts obviously ignored what the victim's family wanted. But her point was that it hardens people. It makes it not go away because there's constant rehearings and rehearings and rehearings, as it was in this case, and constant stays of execution. So the whole thing is never over. It keeps coming back into the news, and that it doesn't bring that elusive closure. And even after the person that killed their loved one is dead, it doesn't seem to make anybody feel any better. Anyway, Bob.
301-8970. My apologies.
Bob in Brookline, thank you for calling.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, guys. Well, Marjorie, you sort of stole my thunder because I was going to bring up Dead Man Walking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, go ahead. Elaborate, Bob.
No, but that's okay. Well, yeah. So I'm hearing an echo myself, but oh well.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So I saw it in my early 30s, and prior to that, I would say I was kind of lean pro-death penalty. And the power of the arts, I did a complete 180 after seeing that movie. And it was the experience of actually watching Sean Penn's character put to death, I believe, through lethal injection. And you were sort of seeing it through the eyes of the family members of the young person he killed. It so struck me. I thought, how could I ever be supportive of that?
Yeah.
If I could say one more thing, and then I obviously want to hear what you have to say. The other thing is, plain and simple, to me, the death penalty is just revenge. And do we want to be a country that's about revenge?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. That's a great point. And another point that has been raised is that the lethal injections, turn out in some cases not to work very well. And they talk about, and I suppose a lot of people would say, well, I don't really care if the killer had to suffer for a while. Well, apparently the killers are having to suffer for a while because they talked about one of these most recent phenobarbital cases where it's a drowning kind of thing. It's not like this instantaneous death that I think a lot of us imagine it to be.
Well, one of the reasons it's a problem is because some chemical companies have said they don't want their drugs used to execute people. 877-301-8970. Since you and the caller both mentioned Dead Man Walking, let me mention another experience that Marjorie and I had, that when people say, what's the interview you've ever done that stays with you more than any other?
Yeah.
This is an interview Marjorie and I did together on New England Cable News where we didn't do much interviewing. We didn't do much talking. We got two people on the show. Bud Welch, who was from Oklahoma. His daughter was killed in the Oklahoma bombing. And despite that, he was the leader of the opposition to the death penalty. And
initially, he was pro-death penalty, and he switched his mind, remember?
That's exactly right. I'm glad you reminded me. And Bob Curley, whose son had been murdered in Cambridge, and who
10-year-old
was not only pro-death penalty, but was Paul Cellucci, when the governor Cellucci was trying to reinstate the death penalty in Massachusetts. Bob Curley was essentially, and Bob has become a friend, I don't mean this to disparage him, sort of the poster boy for the pro-death penalty forces. They didn't want to appear together. You got Bud Welch, I got Bob Curley on the show, and essentially you had two fathers, and they wouldn't even look at each other at the beginning. Do you remember this?
Yes, I do.
And by the end, there were two fathers who had dramatically different positions, but had shared the same incredibly horrible experience. And on television, they were talking to each other near the end of the half hour with their noses maybe inches away from each other. And the end of that story was they became fairly friendly, despite their difference of opinion. And not too much longer later, Bob Curley gave an interview to Marjorie Egan announcing that he had switched his position on the death penalty and he was now against the death penalty based on what he had learned, and he became a brilliant ambassador. I wish that video was still available because it was one of the most moving things I ever participated in my life.
Let's go to Tim in the car. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Tim.
Hi, folks. It's wonderful to talk to you.
Thanks.
I listen all the time.
Thank you.
The problem with the death penalty, and this is what came out of the Massachusetts case, is that prosecutors use it as a weapon. They list it as one of the things that they're going to do to try to prove, and then they'll take it off if you plead guilty. So it coerces the defendant, incentivizes him to plead guilty, even if he would be better off going to trial, even if he's still professing his innocence, because he wants the death penalty off the table. And that's why we don't have it in Massachusetts.
And we have experiences where people in this state and beyond have claimed innocence but said they pled guilty because their sole goal, as you suggested, Tim, was to avoid the possibility of the death penalty. That's a wonderful point. We're glad you called. Thank you. You know, you mentioned this in passing. While there haven't been death penalty cases reversed here in recent years, because there isn't a death penalty in Massachusetts except for federal crimes, as Tim said, look at the number of cases that were reversed with men spending their life in jail under Rachel Rollins when she was the DA
just in
here.
Suffolk County.
Exactly.
I mean, what do they have in common? I think all of them were black.
I think that's
all
true.
of them were poor. They didn't have very good defense lawyers, and in some cases, it was the police that nailed them.
Well, that's the most important thing. What do most of them have in common? They didn't do it.
They didn't do it.
And some of them, including a guy, I think it was in Lowell, who we interviewed, had spent 40-plus years in jail for an arson and murders, and he hadn't committed them. 40-plus years.
I mean, you just look at how much what money can do for you in the court system. I mean, Donald Trump, part of it is he's the former president, but also it's because he's got all these followers that are willing to fund his. I think he spent $50 million last year on legal expenses, something like that. So
none of the money being his own, by the way.
Well, I don't know if maybe some of it was his own, but
I don't think so.
But people give him money that he puts into his legal defense fund. So if you got $50 million, you can stall things endlessly like he has. Or back years ago, the case of O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson was obviously a rich guy, was able to hire the best legal talent there was, and he was acquitted of a murder. I think we all think he certainly did commit.
Well, you know, there's a
murder,
connection, by the way. Barry Scheck, my old buddy from New York City, who founded the Innocence Project, obviously was critical in that case. I'm not going to, I mean, obviously, at least to, I think you and me, O.J. Simpson did it, but it was the Midwest, I believe, Innocence Project that represented Marcellus Williams in this case. Here, by the way, is his lawyer, Tricia Rojo Bushnell, via the Innocence Project, speaking to CNN's Jake Tapper after the Supreme Court denied requests for a delay in the execution.
What we hear time and time again is this argument of finality. It's too late. Things should have been brought before. Things have been heard before, but they've never been heard with this evidence. They've never been heard with what this prosecutor knows and concedes to, that Mr. Williams had an unfair trial, that the prosecutor admits that he struck jurors based on their race, but we have a system that values finality over fairness. And this is the result.
Can I repeat what I said at the beginning, that this lawyer for Mr. Williams said? Both the prosecutor's office, the office that prosecuted him, that got the death penalty, and the surviving spouse of the victim, both wanted his life spared. And the court decided, as she said totally accurately, that finality was all that mattered, and it is final, sadly.
You know, many of the texters are pointing out the so-called pro-life, anti-abortion replacements, or the people that are against abortion are also pro-death penalty. There's 6 Catholics on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had a chance to stall this guy's execution. They did not. 6 Catholics on the Supreme Court, the same ones who are anti-abortion, are apparently okay with the death penalty. And by the way, you know, you can pick and choose, I guess, if you want to, but the Catholic Church is opposed to the death penalty, and oftentimes people use their faith as the reason why they're anti-abortion. So I don't know how you square that. You're anti-abortion, but you're pro-death penalty.
Well, how do you square the fact that you're not even willing to give this guy a hearing? This is not some wild claim to try to prolong his life and put off his execution. Again, prosecutor, victim's family want the execution stayed. Prosecutor agrees there are legal, constitutional issues, and the court won't even hold a hearing to delay this thing. Dean in Worcester, welcome.
Yes, well, it seems like everyone hit the topic that I was on. I was concerned that it mostly affects African Americans.
It
Yes.
does indeed.
Yep.
Western. And you guys brought up a lot of issues, but I think the state of the nation, the mind that we have in terms of the disinformation, the misinformation, and we are not in a good place, I think, in terms to address issues like this, because obviously I think if you have money, you've been able to dodge the bullet and not get the proper representation in what you guys bring up. But the things that affect me, I think that my children, the laws that we have realized that have been lenient, that have been tougher to hit minority African Americans and minority groups are here. And I think that is huge in terms of us implementing the death penalty when we know that the justice is not blind, that it has some issues in terms of how these laws were made, how they were made to implement, and what part of the community it's affecting. And I think that really, that we should back off the death penalty until we get things back in order correctly.
Dean, can I add one thing to what you said? Don't go away, because Margie has something for you, too. The race of the alleged killer not only matters, but the race of the victim matters. If it is a black person, the person of color, who's the alleged shooter or killer, and the victim, the alleged victim of this person is white, the likelihood of them getting the death penalty is dramatically increased. So it matters on both ends of the equation.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
I agree with that. Hold on.
Go ahead, Dion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly that we got some concern about how we're going out to seek justice and how the court is processing. There's just so many elements to it.
Well, I'm so glad you talked about the race disparity, Dean, and thank you for the call, because The New Jim Crow, which is a great book by Michelle Alexander, goes through point by point how African Americans are charged more seriously. They're charged more seriously. They're in jail more often. I mean, it just shows
for the same crime.
Yes, it shows
to a white person.
Systemic racism in the system, and that's why the ACLU made the big campaign. What a difference a DA makes, because the DA often decides what the charges are,
great point.
and DAs are overwhelmingly white, and the defendants are overwhelmingly black. So there's people that deny the racism in the justice system should pick up that book, because she just has it with the numbers, and you can't really argue with the numbers.
Got to take a break.
We got to take a break. We're talking about the death penalty, how you feel about the death penalty. We are unique as a developed nation for still imposing the death penalty. We didn't have a federal death penalty for like 17 years, by the way, until Donald Trump got back in office. I think, was it 13 people in the last 6 months of his presidency?
13 people in the last 6 months.
Yeah, so that's something to look forward to if Donald Trump wins the election, too. Okay, the number is 877-301-8970. What do you think about the death penalty, and particularly this case of Marcellus Williams? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming, I hope, on youtube.com/GBH News. Okay, it's working now. Thanks.
An operation by Azerbaijan's military drove tens of thousands of Armenians from their homes in the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh.
Мы жили около 2 месяца в одном квартире. У нас было 13 человек.
Some Armenians blame their own government for failing to help. That story next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Mass General Brigham, dedicated to building a world-class center of cancer care. With the most cancer surgeries and specialists in New England, they're committed to being with patients for every twist and turn. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/cancer. And Newbury Court, a full-service retirement community in Concord, Massachusetts. Newbury Court is committed to creating active, independent lifestyles for persons 62 and over. More at newburycourt.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Comedian Louis Black is on tomorrow's show, as is Chuck Todd. We're back at the library on Friday, as is Melissa Lutke, who is the first woman in America in a professional locker room of men. She's written a book about it. Our text segment of the day, we forgot at the top, is about one of my favorite guilty pleasures, the chicken nugget. Vox is claiming it's having a moment. Is there a nugget renaissance in your life? And which brand is your favorite and why? The text us, please, at 877-301-8970. Marjorie is laughing derisively because she knows nothing about nuggets.
I don't.
But I will school her at 12:55. Right now,
I have a few texts here when you get
if you're just tuning in, we're talking about the execution of Marcellus Williams in Missouri. Spent 20 years on death row maintaining his innocence. I repeat, prosecutors and the victim's family tried to stop the execution, but not surprisingly, this Supreme Court rejected their request and he was put to death by lethal injection on Tuesday. Our number is 877-301-8970.
Here's Tim in Danvers. I struggle with the death penalty. There are instances where I do wish death upon perpetrators, such as in child abuse. I think a lot of people kind of feel that way if you're horrible to a little kid. But Tim says, however, there are wrongful convictions, and it's traumatic for the prison staff who conduct the killing. And several people have mentioned that, including Elizabeth from West Roxbury. The trauma imposed on correctional employees who are forced to essentially commit murder. If you've looked into it, you'll discover one death sentence causes deep pain and depression for many who aren't even involved in the case. And that is a great point that Helen Prejean talks about in her book, how the prison guards are going back and get the person's toothbrush and going back and get their artifacts to give to the family the trauma it imposes on them. And this one says, OJ was innocent. The glove didn't fit, and he spent the rest of his life looking for the real killer, that is, when he wasn't golfing.
By the way, one of the things that we haven't mentioned, then we'll get right back to the calls. I am a firm believer, we've had this discussion, that one of the reasons why even 47% still support the death penalty in this country is because we don't really know what it means. It's an abstract notion.
Or they think it's a deterrent.
People are prosecuted and executed in our name, United States versus so-and-so, I think they should be public executions. And if it turns out that there were, my guess is that number would drop precipitously. Mike in Lunenburg, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Long-time listener.
Thanks.
First-time caller.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention, the Innocence Project also came up with a number of folks that have been exonerated who were put sitting on death row for years.
What is that number?
The number is something like 200 plus
it's a lot.
people have been exonerated. And, I've been an opponent for years of the death penalty, since my youth, because of the moral implications of it. Just the idea that we give the state the right to take a life is just wrong to me. Often people will say, well, an eye for an eye, when they skip the next sentence, which is, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord.
Hey, beautifully put there, Mike. Thank you much for your call and your stats. The number is 877-301-8970.
That the Supreme Court justices who who disagree with this execution were Elena Kagan, Ketanji Jackson, and Sonia Sotomayor.
What a shock, isn't it? Let's go to Lori in South Boston. Welcome, Lori.
Hi. What I wanted to say was already said by someone else. It just galls me that the Republican states that support life, they say, are the ones that have the death penalty. And it just makes me crazy. So all of the points that you brought up, I absolutely agree with. I've always been against it. It's an awful situation that a lot of innocent people get put to death. So,
wouldn't you think, Lori, wouldn't you think that the average decent person in this country would say, if even one person who is innocent was put to death, then the death penalty is a bad idea? It's so obvious to me, but obviously I'm wrong.
I agree with you. I
knew you would.
absolutely agree. And they have no idea. I'm a retired veterinarian, and I have put to sleep a lot of animals, but in a very peaceful situation. It's completely different. And this is something that galls me, because these are the Republicans who are pro-life, as they say.
Well, by the way, in fairness, there's some Democrats, it's a much smaller number, who are pro-death penalty too. And as I said to you, Kamala Harris, who's been against it her whole life, is apparently refusing to answer questions about where she is today. Lori, thanks for the call.
I think it would be helpful if she answered some more questions and stopped trying to ignore the question.
Well, I mean, can't read her mind. I would assume she has the exact same position, but obviously part of her deal is to show that she was a prosecutor and a tough prosecutor, which she apparently was.
Yeah.
She just didn't believe in this.
Pat Needham, thank you for calling.
Hello, Pat.
Hi. Yes, I'm Pat from Needham, and I just wanted to relay a personal encounter, a personal relationship I developed with an inmate on Florida's death row who was ultimately executed 7 years ago. And he had I think one thing to note is that people do repent. After 30 years, nearly 30 years in prison, Mark was an exceptional man whom I visited twice. He was finally adjusted to the fact that he was going to be executed and was actually looking forward to the means, which was lethal injection, and felt that he was off to a better place with that. Some years later, I came across an article which was based on an extensive study that was done on people who died by lethal injection. And included in this article was a portfolio of pictures of autopsies, of people whose autopsies were done. Mm-hmm. And Mark's face appeared in this roster of pictures. And the statistics are, and I'll just end with this, is 84% of people were found to suffer pulmonary edema.
Yeah.
With the execution, and Mark was one of them. And it's not an easy death. It's a cruel death, and I think people should know that. This
a cruel death in our names again.
Pat, I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's like drowning.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the experience.
Yeah.
They have a paralytic, so they cannot evidence that in their movements. So it's a horror all around, and I just wanted to mention that.
We're really glad you shared your experience, Pat. Thank you for calling. We appreciate it.
Okay, we are moving on, I believe. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Nope.
Okay, we are moving on. Okay, our next... What's next? Jared Bowen is next?
I believe he's standing about 3 feet away from you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong page.
Okay.
Next is GBH's
exactly like
Jared Bowen.
Actually.
He's going to talk to us about Francis Ford Coppola's latest film, Megalopolis. Could it be the worst of all time? We'll find out. Jared Bowen is next on 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, in her new memoir, Uzo Aduba, the award-winning actor whose work spans television, film, and theater, writes about the woman who made her success possible, her mother. An immigrant from Nigeria, Aduba's mother made sure her children were connected to their heritage and that they always had a sense of belonging, even in Medfield, Massachusetts, where Aduba grew up. She joins us to talk about her upbringing gave her the confidence to be who she is today. That and more on The Culture Show at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the University of New England, offering undergraduate and graduate programs in Portland, Maine, on the ocean in Biddeford, Maine, in Morocco, and online. The University of New England, une.edu. And North Shore Music Theater, presenting Million Dollar Quartet, the jam session with Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Carl Perkins that made rock and roll history at Bill Haney's North Shore Music Theater, September 24th through October 6th. Tickets at nsmt.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browding-Mardrigan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Our text segment of the day, apparently chicken nuggets are having a moment, according to Vox. What does a nugget mean to you? Where do you get the best ones? And what separates a great nugget from a run-of-the-mill, let's say, chicken finger. It's 877-301-8970. We get to those right before the 1 o'clock news. Joined now at the Boston Public Library by somebody who's probably never had a chicken nugget. That would be Jared Bowen, who Marjorie did not recognize a few minutes ago. GBH's executive arts editor and the host of The Culture Show, airing daily at 2 o'clock on 89.7. Hello, Jared Bowen.
It's great to be with you.
Okay,
nice
Jared.
to see you.
Our buddy Odie Henderson, who's a great film critic for The Globe, writes about Megalopolis, the Francis Ford Coppola, was it $120 million film?
was.
Apparently it's about some attempted coup in Rome in 63 BC. Stars John Voight and Adam Driver. Here's what Odie had to say. Nothing works here, absolutely nothing. The film has no redeeming value, dull and astonishingly stupid. And he goes on and on and on in an unequivocal, disastrous review of this film.
Well, we should say this is the Godfather guy. For those who don't know who Coppola is, made some of the greatest films of all time.
Yeah.
You haven't seen it, right?
I haven't seen it because I couldn't make the screening this week in Boston.
Oh,
but
I didn't know there was one.
The New York Post called it impossible to like. So this is really interesting because people have been talking about this since it premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, and some people came out and said there's value in this, that Francis Ford Coppola is pushing the form forward. This is what he says because he self-funded this. He sold his wine business.
Vineyard, I know. We used to drink that wine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to pay for the $120 million, which also means that he probably had full editorial control. So a couple of things. One, I think this falls in the category that I feel like I see all the time now, whether it's an album, a book, or a movie, that everybody needs an editor, and apparently there aren't enough editors out in the world right now to be reining some of these things in. So he has also said because he's self-funding, because he isn't under the strict guidelines of a studio, he can make the film he wants, and therefore you shouldn't expect something like you have seen before because he's taken these liberties to expand it. He's also taken political liberties because this is based apparently on some ancient Roman tale, but it's set in New Rome, quote unquote, which apparently has all the license plates of New York City in New Rome. So he is trying to tell this story of the downfall. And what he has said this week at the premiere could be the downfall of the Republic based on the presidential election. Again, his words, and this is what he's talking about. So the other thing I will say about this is that you have all of these great actors. You have Adam Driver, you have Giancarlo Esposito, you have Dustin Hoffman, John Voight. They all signed on to this for a reason, and it could be a horrible film, but I also think there are a lot of films that we discount at the beginning, even Apocalypse Now, because of all the conversation around it. Martin Sheen having a heart attack, the budget going overblown. Of course, that's grown in our cultural acceptance. So I think it'll be some time before we can determine how bad it is.
When's it open?
How bad it is.
When's it open?
It opens Friday.
So is the conventional wisdom, I was just thinking as you're talking, was it Heaven's Gate? Was that the name of the movie? It was supposedly the worst movie, high-budget movie in the history of movies. Was it Heaven's Gate?
It was Heaven's Gate. And then
or Ishtar.
Ishtar.
That was Dustin Hoffman too, right?
Exactly.
Oh, and Warren Beatty.
Was it Warren Beatty?
Yeah, so some of them don't age well. But I was thinking of, a lot of people talk about Crash. Remember, everybody acclaimed.
I thought
won
that
the Academy
awful.
Award.
It was so acclaimed. It won the Best Picture, and nobody talks about it. It will not go down as one of our greatest films.
Because it was so cliched.
So it works both ways.
Totally cliche.
Exactly.
I couldn't believe it won Best Picture.
Is Coppola, I should have known this before I even say it, so let me be sort of indirect. Hasn't he been accused of some bad behavior? You don't know, so shut up, Jim. Okay, so Megalopolis
so
is
many,
opening
it's hard
Friday.
To keep it straight,
it is hard to keep it straight.
Is Adam Driver like the hottest actor in the world? I mean, he's in everything, isn't he?
And he's really, really good. So that'll be interesting to see. It's always interesting to see when a really good actor is in a really bad project.
How old is Dustin Hoffman and John Voight? Like 100? How old are they?
I think they're at least Dustin Hoffman's in his 80s. Francis Ford Coppola is 85. And by the way, he has been talking about doing this film for decades. It has been gestating for decades.
No, nothing like those 63 BC films, I always say, to get you all excited. Apparently there are allegations, our staff is telling us, coming out of the Megalopolis. I say it right?
Yep.
His on-set behavior emerged in a May article in The Guardian. Anonymous sources allege the director pulled women to sit on his lap and tried to kiss some of the topless and scantily clad female extras. Oh, my goodness.
Okay, well, that takes care of him.
Well, you knew about that, Jim.
I did?
Jim knows about those things.
Well, I mean, it's something that,
I missed that one.
I happen to read. Well, you know about it now. So can we do one other thing before we get to some plays in town? Ai Weiwei, there's a guy who, I read the story, and when I read 2/3 of it, the guy comes into a museum where Ai Weiwei's sculpture is and throws it on the ground or destroys it or something. And my initial reaction is that's horrible, but okay. But then I read there's a guy who essentially, the same guy, runs around the museums and destroys people's art in the spirit of his celebrating his own art. I mean, the guy's obviously mentally ill, obviously, right?
Or he is an artist trying to make a statement.
What is the statement exactly?
I'm not going to argue for him because I had never heard of him before, and most references to him are that he's an aspiring artist.
Where'd this happen? In Italy or something?
So this happened in Italy. Ai Weiwei, hugely famous international artist, largely famous too for the fact that he had actually returned to China and was imprisoned there, disappeared from the world for a long time. He's since left China again. He spends a lot of time here in the United States. I interviewed him on an open studio a few years ago. And he had this gallery opening in Italy, and one of his pieces is called Porcelain Cube 2009, and it's like Delft pottery, so this blue and white porcelain cube. It's quite heavy, actually. It's about 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And Ai Weiwei actually posted a video to his Instagram in the middle of this opening party in this gallery. This aspiring artist, Vaclav Pisfeich, walks up, pushes it over, and it just shatters and is completely destroyed. And because Ai Weiwei is a very famous international artist, his work is very expensive, so this is considered a huge loss. But as you look, to your point, Jim, deeper into this aspiring artist's career, he's climbed up on statues and stripped himself naked, trying to make the argument that if David, the statue David, shouldn't be clothed, he shouldn't be either. And he once ran up to the performance artist Maria Abramovich and took a portrait that she thought he was bringing to her and then smashed it over her head. It was a paper portrait. There wasn't glass in the frame. So there's been assault, there's been the nudity, there's been him defacing statues. But
how do you respond to his argument that if David is nude, so should everyone be? What's your reaction to that, Jared?
I mean, it is kind of making a point that if we can accept nudity in public, why can't people be nude too? But here's the really interesting thing.
David looked a little better than most people do.
Yeah.
Most of us would say.
He was well-toned. Is that
very
what we're
toned,
saying?
yes.
A few years ago, Ai Weiwei was very famous for a piece that he did where he dropped a Han Dynasty urn. This is something he did in 1995 at a time when Chinese artifacts, even if they're 2,000 years old, which this one was, were readily available. He began acquiring them, and at one point he dropped the urn. It smashed to the ground.
Wait, intentionally?
He did this intentionally. He didn't take it from a museum. He bought it outright and then photographed it. It's 3 black and white photographs. You see the process of it falling to the ground. And his statement there was that you can draw more attention. He was making several statements, but you can draw a lot of attention to this antiquity that is now more famous than ever because it's been documented in this photograph and sent around the world.
Well, that is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. And I guess you'd say what's good for the goose, so to speak. He got paid back, sort of karma's a you-know-what.
Yeah, people are saying that.
We're talking to Jared Bowen.
So, Jared, Tom Stoppard, people know, one of the most acclaimed playwrights, a British guy, has a semi-autobiographical play at the Huntington Leopoldstadt. He discovered rather late in life that his family had a Jewish heritage and that some of his family members were in the Holocaust. So here is director Carrie Perloff. We were talking about Leopoldstadt last week about the impact of the October 7th tragedy on the audience of Leopoldstadt and one of its central arguments of Zionism versus assimilation. Here she is.
And I think the arguments that Stoppard puts in this play have really been heightened by the events. So we try the play is not didactic. It does not point a finger, it doesn't make a point, but it really shows you the conflict that has happened with Jews from the beginning of the diaspora.
And she was here with Rebecca Gibble, who's one of the lead players in this multi-character play. What'd you think?
So Jim and I saw this together.
We did 2 rows apart.
Sort of.
Yep.
Jared had a better seat
he did.
as usual.
I'm done with that, though. Go ahead.
So this, as you say, Marjorie, this is, in some sense, Tom Stoppard's own story because he was born in Czechoslovakia but raised in England, and because of his mother's construct about their family, because she was so pained by what had happened to her Jewish family, where they lost so many family members to the Holocaust. In some sense, I guess she was trying to protect Tom Stoppard for that. So he didn't know, as you say, until very late in life, that he was Jewish and the extent to which...
Well, that he was totally Jewish. He knew that he had a Jewish 1/4, I think he thought, but he didn't know that every ancestor was Jewish.
And he didn't know that he had lost so many family members. And there's this great line toward the end of the play where one of the characters says to another who's grappling with this sudden awareness, "You live as without history." Yeah. So it's this whole interrogation of trying to understand who we are and then what the consequences are if we're not privy to that information and we just move on in life without having the attachment that so many people who have been through something as horrific as the Holocaust have experienced. You don't bring that to bear in your DNA, overtly anyway. So this play moves us through 1899 to 1955. And in 1899, we find this Jewish family in Vienna, which is the cultural capital of the world. They have come up through successive generations of having immigrated there and being poverty-stricken to now being members of this society. But the question is, are they really members of society? Have they fully assimilated? And we see this family wrestle with that, especially as one has converted to Catholicism. His own brother is very proud of his Jewish heritage, has not converted. And we see...
Those are great scenes between the two brothers, but they are spectacular.
Fabulous dialogue. Yeah. And this is heavy subject matter, but Tom Stoppard also injects a tremendous amount of humor.
That's what Corey said. Before the director left us, she said, I want to say one more thing. As intense as it is really funny, and it is really funny.
So we see them wrestle with this, but then, of course, as we're moving from 1899 through the 1930s, we see that this family has realized that there was never true assimilation, that they always were distinct in this society, and, of course, they were never going to be made to forget it.
Yeah, the acting sounds fantastic in this play, too, and Tom Stoppard is such a, genius.
I will say I'm part of the Boston Theater Critics Association, and we've made this a critics pick. So there was preponderance of critics weighing in and making it a critics pick.
And we should say, we mentioned this the other day when they were here, but in case you missed it, Margie and I were at Tanglewood taping a television show years ago. Yeah. And who do we bump into on the green there but Tom Stoppard?
Yeah,
we sat down and talked to him. We played some of the interview the other day. Oh my gosh. It was really great. And to say, in addition to being brilliant, to say he is one of the most charming men on the planet, he was spectacular. He was great.
One of the things they do in Great Britain, I wish they did here, is they have these standing room only tickets in the back of the theater. So if you are young or you're in college or you just don't have a lot of money to spend $200 or $300 to go to the theater, you can get these standing room only tickets, which enabled me when I was in college to go see these Tom Stoppard plays for like nothing.
Same here. I remember seeing, I think I was in the second row of seeing The Cherry Orchard. I think it was at the National Theater, and it was Vanessa Redgrave.
Oh my gosh.
Starring. And because I was young, I could walk up and buy this really inexpensive ticket, and at least when I was last there, the tickets still haven't reached Broadway prices.
Yeah, so because they're more. Yeah. It's because they're more subsidized by the government.
More
What's
subsidized.
Going on there?
It's more ingrained in the culture. Of course, Shakespeare. Obviously, for centuries, theater has been a fundamental part of the culture. So why would you try to make impediments for people to access it?
Yeah, it's too bad that we don't have that attitude about the arts here. Really.
By the way,
we're
this
trying
is
to change it.
At the Huntington till October 13th, so you have a few weeks to get there.
All right, so this is a great name for a play, I must say. Urinetown, but it's famous.
It's not You're in Town. It's Urinetown.
I think
exactly.
Isn't that what I said?
Well, it could be interpreted as You're in Town.
As in the bodily fluid.
As in the body.
Yes, it's a lyric stage, Boston. It's wonderfully named. So what's the deal with this thing?
So, spoiler alert, this is also a critic's pick. This is a musical at the Lyric Stage Company. It's on through October 20th. Really, really fun and good. I was very excited to see this because I have been aware of this musical forever, but I'd never seen it. So I think that this is totally a musical for our time. It first emerged off-Broadway and then on Broadway in 2001, won Tony Awards. The Lyric Stage Company had actually had a successful production prior, but this is called Urinetown because we are finding ourselves in a time where there is a community that has been experiencing a 20-year drought, and you can no longer use your private bathroom or public restrooms, so you have to pay to pee. It's become a privilege to pee.
Oh my goodness!
So I would argue, all these years later, after 2001, a lot of this is bearing out in our society. We see this class division. We see what you have to pay to get access to certain privileges. We see the widening economic divide. Of course, maybe what would have seemed so absurd in 2001 seems a lot more palpable today in terms of a drought and what some of the ramifications are. So this is very much a musical told in the style of Brecht and using some absurdist humor to get at really salient points. So it's very funny. It references a lot of musicals like West Side Story and Les Mis, lots of gospel. But it's all the while cheeky because you have You're in Good Company, which
Here you
is
go.
the company that's managing all of the public toilets, and it's raising its fees so that some of the leaders can go to Rio possibly, which reminded me of the Steward healthcare crisis
That's
that we're in.
right.
I'm thinking, feels like it was written 4 seconds ago. And it's also very meta because you have their own characters telling us basically how the play ends at the beginning, also reminding us that this is a mythical bad place filled with symbolism. They walk you along on all of the steps here. I thought it was really, really successful. And the choreography, the direction, terrific.
Okay, that's at the Lyric Stage through October 20th. And the Speakeasy's Laughs in Spanish, which I believe is not in Spanish, but it's called Laughs in Spanish.
A little bit of Spanish,
A little bit of Spanish, is there through October 12th at the Calderwood Pavilion. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, this is a comedy. We've talked about Wynwood in Miami before, which is...
You sent me there.
Yeah, that's right.
That's where the murals are.
Exactly.
Aren't they?
Yep.
They're fabulous.
And so
outdoor murals, it is incredible.
Yeah, for people.
Scores of them. Go ahead, say what it is.
Yeah, for people who don't know, it's this area that has experienced a tremendous amount of gentrification, so better and for worse. It was a part of Miami that people wouldn't necessarily go to. It's been turned into this massive tourist destination because they handed it over to the artists who paint these murals. It's street after street, neighborhood after neighborhood of murals. So this sets us down with a gallery owner in the middle of Wynwood, and she arrives at work one morning to find that all of her paintings have been stolen, which is terrible because she's about to have a gallery opening that night. And adding to the problems that are already mounting, her very operatic mother suddenly arrives on the scene. Her mother, who is a famed actor, who talks like an actor, just stepping out of the Yale School of Drama, arrives. So this is a bad day for this young woman. So this is a comedy, Laughs in Spanish, obviously, just about this mother and daughter relationship and the relationship she has with her friend and the relationship her friend has with her boyfriend, maybe fiance. And this is all against the backdrop of the whodunit. Why did the paintings disappear and where did they go?
You know, I don't mean in specific cases, but I'm thinking what Marjorie said before about it's too bad, unlike in London, there's not a standing room only kind of thing. I always want to, even though we're lucky enough if we're going to talk about something, obviously we're not paying when we're going, and obviously you do this for a living. It seems to me that in almost all these plays that we go to, unlike when you're spending time on Broadway and the prices are just insane. Who is the... who told us? Evita, Patti LuPone, when she was on with us about a year ago, was talking about how embarrassingly expensive the prices are there. They're affordable tickets to most of these plays in town, are they not?
There are a lot of the companies now are making a greater effort to, if they can't have it consistently throughout the run, at least they'll have some performances where you can have discounted tickets, or they'll have a lottery mechanism, maybe even working with libraries where you can get discounted tickets. I think, when I said we're working on this, I feel like this is my job to talk about this here and on the Culture Show. How can we reduce these barriers to admission? I think that there is going to be a link that we have seen, that we may see between what the mayor has just done in offering free museum admissions to students. We'll soon, within the next couple of weeks, learn what the results of that program are. And I think my hope is that people will realize that it yielded enough terrific benefit to have so many new families coming into museums that the performing arts organizations will also recognize the value of that and move this even further along.
When you say new families, you mean families who had not heretofore been at that museum.
New to the facilities,
so it introduced them to the facility, which is great.
I mean, it's a fairly obvious point, but the price of the tickets obviously is a big deterrent to... Well,
especially if you're taking a whole family of kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that we weigh this different ways, because if you go to the movie theater, you're not going to expect a discounted ticket, and it's going to cost you probably $20 if you want to get some food and get a movie ticket. But I just believe, and as we've seen other cultures, like in England, espouse, that this is something that should be... This isn't like a lot of other things like sports or the movies, that we should have access to culture.
Well, it's not like culture. It's that we quote the late, great Brian O'Donovan, live music's where it's at. Live acting is where it's at. When you get to see the actual players, when Rebecca Gibble was here, I mentioned that during the curtain call at the end, I noticed that all the players she has the final words, which are really heavy in this play, and talking about what happened to family members and people they loved outside the family. And I said, I saw you weren't smiling during the curtain call. And she said something like, which I thought was a great line, in acting school, they teach you how to get into a character. They don't teach you how to get out of a character. And seeing that had such a profound impact on me. And seeing just players live interact. It's just really huge.
Well, here's what's fascinating to hear you say that, because I had the same experience for the curtain call. I focused on her because I also saw
we didn't
her
talk
having
about this.
that emotional, and because I was 2 rows ahead of you, I could see that her eyes had also welled up with tears.
Yes, I know.
And so it's amazing that we both had that same reaction, because that is the energy of a theater. Also, Jim, I don't know if you noticed, but I was aware of the moments in that play where there was absolute silence, except for what was happening on the stage. Like, not anybody shuffling in their seat, no breathing, no rustling, nothing, because that, again, is the power of theater when you're all brought into this together.
And it's live, and it's right in front of you, and the acting and the singing, if they're singing, and the dancing and all that is just
So are you calling in at the end of the show, or you're not? Because if you're not, you got to tell us really quickly. Is he calling in? Hello.
Jamie's the boss.
Jamie, is he calling in at the end of the show? We're out of time. Call in at the end of the show and tell us what you're doing.
I'll be back.
Goodbye.
All right. Jared Bowen, thank you very much.
We should say, by the way, to tease, well, you can do this later, okay.
Okay.
We can say it twice.
Who you have tomorrow, we should talk about, too, by the way. Okay. But go ahead, we'll talk about that at 1:55.
Jared is executive arts editor here at GBH and host of The Culture Show, which is every day at 2 o'clock, right after the 2 o'clock news. Up next, national security expert Juliette Kayyem on America's culture of political violence. A new hurricane barreling down on the west coast of Florida, and California is suing Exxon, alleging lies. Juliette Kayyem is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com.
More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com. Lions, leopards, and cheetahs, oh my! Using the latest technology, a team of filmmakers follow big cats through the Okavango Delta. Don't miss Big Cats 24/7 tonight at 8 on GBH2.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Jim Braude, head on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. We're weeks away from the 1-year anniversary of
food influencers. Then our text question of the day, chicken nuggets. Apparently they're having a moment or a resurgence. What does a nugget mean to you? Where do you get the best ones? And what separates a great nugget from a run-of-the-mill chicken finger? Text us at 877-301-8970. All that ahead, Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Well, people are evacuating from areas along the Gulf Coast of Florida. Hurricane Helene is approaching. The system is expected to make landfall by tomorrow night in the Big Bend area. From member station WUSF, Carrie Sheridan reports storm preparations are underway in Florida.
Sandbag operations are busier than normal in Sarasota, where many homes far from the coast flooded just a month and a half ago. That was because of Hurricane Debbie, which passed here as a tropical storm. County worker Joe Perkins says people are taking Helene seriously.
A lot of people are scared what's going to happen, especially with everybody that's gotten flooded out with Debbie. So a lot of people are worried.
Police are urging people to evacuate if asked and stay out of rising floodwaters. Many public schools are closed as their buildings are converted to emergency shelters. For NPR News, I'm Carrie Sheridan in Sarasota.
Former President Donald Trump returns today to the swing state of North Carolina. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben reports the campaign's also on a media tour many voters likely have not heard about, doing interviews with reaching mostly young voters and mostly men.
Trump and Vance have appeared on an array of podcasts and YouTube shows during this campaign. Almost all of those hosts have been men. According to the campaign, the goal is to reach as many voters as possible. But data from Edison Podcast Insights shows that of 7 shows they've appeared on, 5 have audiences that are at least 3/4 men, many of them young. That could be a smart electoral strategy. Young voters have low turnout, and polls show young men considerably more conservative than young women. Turning out more young men could maybe change the electorate enough to help Trump win. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News.
Vice President Harris heads back to Pennsylvania. She's expected to highlight more details of her economic agenda at a Pittsburgh event. President Biden, meanwhile, says he's at peace with his decision to exit the presidential race.
When I ran this last term, I said that I saw myself as a transition president. Transitioning to a new generation of leadership.
Biden on ABC's The View. A man convicted of breaking into a woman's home and stabbing her to death was executed last night in Missouri for the 1998 crime. Leisha Gale's family and prosecutors say Marcellus Williams, who'd maintained his innocence, should have been allowed to live. St. Louis Public Radio's Rachel Lippman reports on one of the concerns raised about the case.
The tests on the DNA that they pulled from the murder weapon came back consistent with two former employees of the county prosecutor's office, an investigator and the attorney who took the case to trial. Both of them later admitted that they had touched the weapon without wearing gloves. That meant possible contamination of any DNA evidence that could exclude Williams as the killer.
That's Rachel Lippman reporting. This is NPR.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. A seafood processing plant in Fall River being sued for allegedly employing migrant teenagers as young as 15 years old. Ben Burke has the story.
Legal aid groups filed the federal lawsuit Tuesday morning. It claims as many as 10 underage migrants worked at Raw Seafoods in 2022, some of them feeding fish through dangerous machinery.
These kids were getting 2 to 4 hours of sleep a night and were unable to focus in school.
Jordan Cosby is a Yale law student working with the Worker and Immigrants' Rights Advocacy Clinic, which represents 3 unnamed migrant teenagers.
One describes in the complaint having freezer burns from working really rapidly on these fish sorting machines, and that the next day his hands would be shaking so much that he couldn't hold a pencil in class.
A spokesman for Raw Seafoods says the company recently fired a group of underage workers who used false documents to lie about their ages. He says the company doesn't have enough information to take further action. For the New England News Collaborative, I'm Ben Burke.
President of Brandeis stepping down. Ronald Leibowitz is leaving his post after 8 years leading the school. Leibowitz announced the move today, soon after the Brandeis faculty narrowly passed a no-confidence vote on his leadership. Faculty's complaints include issues with university's budget, fundraising, layoffs, and the handling of student protests. Leibowitz's resignation takes effect November 1st, at which point he'll become president emeritus. With his departure, Brandeis alum and higher ed leader Arthur Levine will come on as the school's interim president. You're listening to GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, working to help protect small businesses and the owners that run them, offering customizable coverages to salons, accounting firms, tradespeople, and more. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com.
I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library and streaming
Can
at
I
YouTube.
stop for a second? That was the most pathetic applause for this
people.
show I've ever had.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is,
I was a little
but
bit.
that was
Thank
really.
you. God.
Oh my God! Thank you. That was very kind. The second round.
So,
Sorry, Marjorie.
I want to mention that our tech segment of the day, apparently chicken nuggets are having a moment.
They are.
Or a resurgence, according to Vox. So what does the chicken nugget mean to you? Where do you get the best ones? What separates a great nugget from a run-of-the-mill chicken finger? And do you feel guilty feeding chicken nuggets to your unsuspecting children?
It's all the sauce, isn't it? I mean, do we really... Sorry, I'm interrupting.
Sauces.
Why don't you just text in, Juliette,
Text in.
okay?
877-301-8970.
Honey mustard.
Sauce is a crucial ingredient, no doubt about it.
Hot mustard, actually.
Okay.
And I can answer your question. What does the nugget mean to me? Everything. That's what it means to me.
Okay, Jim.
We're joined now by national security expert Juliette Kayyem. She has a few
that
kids
was a
who
pivot.
eat nuggets.
That was a pivot.
She's former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and a contributing writer for The Atlantic. Hello, Juliette Kayyem.
Hello.
Hello.
There we go, people. Woo! God. Get out of bed for you people. Normally, it's radio.
Okay,
I don't have to dress.
Fine. Okay,
and
let's
now
keep
look
going
at
here.
us.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Juliette, you wrote a piece about political violence in the United States of America for The Atlantic, a terrific piece. What'd you say?
Thank you. Oh, goodness. basically I'm preparing people for not November 5th, but January 20th. And so what the trigger for it was for the first time in the nation, well, the designation it hasn't been around that long, but 2 weeks ago, the Department of Homeland Security designated January 6, 2025 as what we call a national special security event. And so that basically means that between January 6th and January 20th, which is also what we call an NSSE, DC is going to be on heightened alert. That's
20th is inauguration.
Inauguration. Yeah. So that's like the first time in American history that we would view what had been a benign day, January 6th, not anymore after the insurrection in 2021, as a significant security event. And I think what it signals is that whatever we think is going to end November 5th, Trump is president and Trump is not president, isn't ending November 5th. That isn't only, so I want to be clear here, Trump is the center of political violence, both as its primary promoter and the highest profile victim. So both exist, right? You can't deny that there's been assassination attacks against him. The idea that this ends when he's gone is, I think we prepare.
I'm reading your piece, and I am saying to myself, I'm about halfway through. Again, it's in the Atlantic, as Marjorie said. I'm about halfway through, and I'm saying, I bet you that this feeling about supporting violence against the other side's leader is no longer just the province of one side. And then I come upon this paragraph in your story. One survey conducted this summer by the University of Chicago researcher Robert Pape, we had him on a couple of years ago.
He's
he
great.
is
He's
incredible. Indicated that contrary to past findings, the percentage of people supporting violence against Trump was larger than the percentage of people supporting pro-Trump violence. What do you make of that?
There's a whole reason for this, right? Because just be clear, because I'm not doing both sidesism. It is this horror has been unleashed by a political leader, right? There's no equivalent, as I write in this. There's no equivalent on the Democratic side. You can say there are people who support liberal or progressive causes who might support violence. There's no equivalent political leader on the Democratic side. Having now unleashed it, there are forces that then view themselves under threat who will justify to themselves, right, as the second assassination attempt showed, that will view the killing of Trump as a necessary evil to protect democracy. And Trump is doing nothing to end this cycle. So here's a scenario that we have to be prepared for. Trump either wins decisively, right? He gets these swing states all to move in his favor, or he wins through some craziness that they're planning for too on the judicial or legal front. If you think that there are going to be millions of people out on the street who oppose this. Some percentage of them may start violence. They will be promoted by foreign enemies. Violence will be promoted within their ranks by foreign enemies, and you are going to have a situation that we haven't seen in American history.
You know, can we stop for a second? Everybody knows what happened on January 6th, so it is totally understandable that this would be whatever it's called, a national special security event. Yeah. But step back for a second. The day, all we remember is the violence. What happens on that day is members of Congress count. We count. I shouldn't say members of Congress. The vice president certifies the election based on the electoral count. That's one of the most sacred days, the peaceful transfer of power. And it is unbelievable that D.C. is going to have to be armed to the teeth because of what, and I hope people, even Trumpists out there, agree that Trump inspired 3.5 years ago.
The only scenario that stops this, because every other scenario, something will be significant. Because if it's close, you're going to get the House members. Johnson, Speaker of the House, has sort of hinted like, well, if it's fair, I'll certify it. I was like, who gets to decide that? The only scenario where I think you finally can put some part of the genie back in the bottle, because, as you know from our long conversations, McConnell could have done it in 2021,
Yes.
right? That was our last chance. This is if she wins decisively. If every swing state, for whatever reason, the polling's wrong or whatever, every swing state goes her way, then you can't have a straight face argument that it should be Trump. But if you have, if you have Arizona and Nevada going one way and you've got Michigan, you're going to have, so she's got to win decisively, which is like a huge burden. Like, why is that on us?
Can I add something that I've mentioned before? She has to win decisively. By the way, John King, who knows more about this than anybody on the planet, your colleague at CNN and our weekly guest, said yesterday, with 42 days to go, this is going to be a hair's difference come November. But having said that, it's not just her winning by a lot. It's the media deciding, and we haven't had this discussion in depth here, but we will, that if Trump loses decisively, other than him making what normal people in the business would consider to be news, he should not be covered anymore.
No.
When he lies, when he does what he does, it's one thing. He's a candidate. He should not be covered by the mainstream press.
Have you guys done a story on this? I love the term, and I use it all the time now, sanewashing.
Yeah, we did a couple of weeks ago. Explain to people what that is.
So sanewashing is this idea that sort of like the political media is covering two candidates. And they're covering Vice President Harris and wondering what her policy is on the procurement of submarines for the Navy, right? Like they're holding her to a standard. And then they cover Trump and they try to glean a policy in the 1% of rationality that he's speaking. But if you go on True Social and if you hear his rallies, it is bat-ass crazy. And what the media, a lot of the political media is doing is what's being called sane washing, because they don't know how to cover the crazy. So they're saying, well, Trump talked about trade policy. Trump talked about trade policy as he was talking about, guinea pigs and rabbits and getting bitten by snakes. So that kind of coverage is what is being called sane washing. It's not giving the American public a sense of what is really going on.
Well,
in
it's
that
tough
man's
when he's
head.
running and he's the nominee. It shouldn't be nearly as tough if he's a decisive loser on November 5th. We're talking to Juliette Kayyem.
But read his True Social. I'm telling you, you read his True Social, and to promote the Atlantic, there is a piece in the Atlantic right now. I think it's the #1 piece about 5 minutes on True Social. Why aren't we covering this? It's
Well,
I just said crazy
At least
out
they're
loud.
covering the part of the rallies, the part that he said last night, where women don't have to worry, we don't have to be anxious and lonely and obsessed about abortion 24 hours a day, which I don't think people are obsessed with abortion 24 hours a day, because he's going to be our protector.
Yeah.
And I mean, my God, it just kind of made you nauseous. But I just want to ask you one thing about
so creepy.
You talked a lot about how
so creepy,
because people did go to jail in significant sentences in some cases for what went on January 6th. HBO's got this special on Stop the Steal, which I found extremely frightening, talking about what went on in the States prior to everybody showing up in Washington. And one of the theories, and you've talked about this with us, is that because of the deterrence of the jail terms, that there's going to be a lot of horror going on in the States this time around. People that don't want to come to D.C. and have it go on there.
That's right.
That's pretty scary, too.
Yeah, that's, I mean, if you're thinking about where do you want to put your safety and security resources, you want to put them in Georgia. You want to put them, in other words, there's going to be those shenanigans. I don't want to say I'm living in Never Land. There is a lot of focus on some of these things that are going on. And, but the people losing their legal licenses, people not being, people going into debt, Giuliani is the perfect example, does have a disciplining effect that you are not, that we need to just keep doing. So there are challenges to these changes to the Georgia law. It's just exhausting, though. It's just, these people are, they're not only dangerous, they're just a freaking waste of all of our time because they lose, right? And so that's why she needs to win decisively. This will be, if January 7th, 2021 was an opportunity for McConnell to isolate this part of Republicanism, he was too afraid. The next moment is a decisive one for. If he wins, we've all written that book.
We're talking to Juliette Kayyem.
So, Juliette, apparently, according to the Attorney General, Exxon has lied out in California to about the potential for plastic recycling, which makes you feel terrible because I think a lot of people are trying to do the right thing. What's the deal with the suit against Exxon?
Yeah, do you compost?
I do.
Yeah, no, that's sort of required now. But
I hope it's. I always wonder, are they really taking away all this?
Yeah,
extra food?
I think they are.
I hope so.
Yeah. So there's always been. So basically, it's a very interesting lawsuit. It's coming out of California, and it was that Exxon essentially wanted to promote certain purchases, and you do it by convincing people that they're not bad for the environment and that you can recycle them. It's a lot more complicated than that. And it was based on actually really good media reporting across the board. The lawsuit has been filed, and it's really shocking, or it's part of the complaint. Like, it's just literally Exxon just lied to the California public. So the remedy that they're seeking is not, I mean, it's going to be damages against Exxon, but the remedy is interesting. It is basically Exxon would have to launch a campaign that sort of said, this is what works for recycling, this doesn't. I have to say what Exxon is saying. In their defense, Exxon is saying in other states, right, they have strong recycling programs that are working. Why are you blaming us for what California has failed to do? But it's a sort of a remarkable case, and it does show, I mean, we saw this with, natural gas. We saw this with a variety of things that Exxon, or these big companies, will promote research to justify what it is that they want in terms of the market.
Or you see all these ads all the time, the wonderful future of plastics. We're going to have wonderful plastics, and you think to yourself, I don't think we can have wonderful plastics. But
no, it is like, I mean, and you do think like, I had been convinced, somewhere I read that Keurig cups, I hope I'm right on this, that Keurig cups were recyclable, and then I read somewhere that they weren't. I stopped using Keurig because, like, all of a sudden I realized that's a lot of just waste. Like, it is, when you think about how much packaging goes into it.
Supposedly,
the Keurig coffee.
They said they have these ones now, the Keurig cups you can bring back to the store and they recycle them.
Oh, that's weird.
But I always wonder, are they really doing it?
Yeah, or
are
they just throwing them in the
trash?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They claim that they're recycling them. I hope that they are. I have them for espresso, which happily I don't have to do 10 times a day.
Can you do me a favor, Jane? Before we get sued, can we find out what the truth is about because I think Juliette's right, but just in case she's not, maybe we should fix this
liability
before we're
protection,
defendants.
really quickly.
There are some
Keurig cups. I'm going to say that they are, but I'm saying there's a big promotion to recycle them.
There's a big promotion to recycle. They give you a little bag, and you put the leftover ones in the bag. And then
when have you done that with the ones we have in our studio, by the way?
You guys, your studio, that is a place I do not miss. That place needs one.
We're big offenders.
That place needs one big recycle.
It's really disgusting.
I'm going to.
So listen to this. In the complaint from the California Attorney General, just so you know how severe, according to the plaintiffs, this is, the recycling rate in the U.S. has never exceeded 9%, and that some 92% of plastic material processed through ExxonMobil's, quote, advanced recycling technology does not become recycled plastic. Instead, it is burned as fuel.
Ouch.
I mean, that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's just
92%.
It's really shocking. Aren't you the one who's been saying that the little symbol on the bottom is just total BS on so much of the recycling
My
stuff?
understanding, and people should double check this, but my understanding is that a bunch of little triangles on the bottom, but the only ones that are recyclable in Massachusetts are number 1s and number 2s.
Yeah.
So they try to fool you with 3, 4, 5, 6s, and sometimes 7s.
As if it's something real.
And it's not.
Yeah.
But we're getting some information from our staff here. Says depends on the town. Companies are regularly greenwashing by putting those symbols on plastic.
Greenwashing, good.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it's doing, fooling you and
sane washing and greenwashing.
Yeah.
We have two. Yeah, these are all good.
So we have 6 minutes to state some other things that we have no idea if they're accurate or not.
No, come on, you guys. I mean,
I think we should find out about Keurig.
I do think we should. And your producer is like giving me. I don't know what he's giving me.
So I want to talk about.
Am I going to jail? I really don't want to get sued.
Can we talk about another lawsuit for a second?
Okay.
You do it. You're about to do it.
We were going to talk about the UN. Oh, the Haitians.
The Haitians that are suing Trump and Vance about the Springfield claims that are lies, but they keep saying them and causing endless fright and fear in the city of Springfield, not to mention money for all the protection they need.
Yeah. So Ohio has, it's sort of interesting, but Ohio has a private citizens' cause of action, thereby giving access to the courts to private citizens for conduct of another private citizen that is public in nature. So it's a complicated standing argument. So the Haitian groups are now saying, we, as Haitians who have been harmed, the schools closed, the community under lockdown, harassment, all the stuff that's coming their way, because with direct link to both what Trump is saying, but the Vance doubling down. Vance is their senator. They have now filed a complaint. It has to be approved by a court, so the status is not like, oh, it's a lawsuit. It is just a filing that has to be approved by the court, but it's basically that the actions of their senator, Senator Vance, has denied them their equal protection and due process rights because the mob has come in. And when you look at what's happening in Springfield, when I sort of step back on it, we know that the factual basis of this was an error at best. A woman posts something on Facebook. She has now retracted it and essentially apologized. And they're just doubling down. Vance has said, I will make up a narrative to fit what it is. He said this to Dana Bash, I will, if that story isn't right, there's a similar story. So I'm going to sort of make up the narratives. And that is it's just so mean. When you think about the Haitians in Springfield or Haitians anywhere. So that's the cause of action. We'll see how it unfolds and whether an Ohio state-based court would view this as the sort of public deprivation of their due process. But it seems to me, can I reduce it? You were saying this before. If you knowingly make a statement that you know to be false, and Trump may not know it's false. Vance clearly knows it's false, because Trump, I think, with all due respect, is totally out of it. Yeah. Vance is not. He lies intentionally to keep up with his boss, with Donald Trump. If you knowingly make a statement in this society that you know is false, that puts other people at physical risk, how is that not
incites violence?
How
is
that
not
an actionable offense? Just think of the school kids.
Yeah.
That's what I think. If you're a fourth grader,
bomb threats.
They're closing the school. You're a parent. You have to explain to the kid why the school is closed, and that begins with, the former president and potentially the future vice president are basically saying that we're eating cats and dogs here. It's so. I hate doing this, but it is so mean on a level that I don't meet people like this in my real life.
Cruelty is the point, is the great title of that.
I think about all the sex scandals with these people and all the sort of the harassment and all this stuff. I was on a daily basis, I don't run into pedophiles. I don't think I do.
You never know.
The group of people are not just bad for politics or bad for democracy. They're just a sliver, a really sort of perverse sliver of how most Americans live their life. Maybe that's the only way I can wake up in the morning.
Since you digress, let me digress quickly before we re-answer the Keurig question, thanks to our colleagues. This has been said by a lot of people. Even if you like Donald Trump's politics, whatever that means, you work for a lot of corporations. Yeah. You do a lot of consulting. Yeah. Do you know one corporation that would hire that person to be the CEO of their company? One? Even if they love what he stands for, whatever that is? None. No. And we're about to hire him as the president of the United
States. And if you're a public company in particular, Elon Musk, he has complete ownership of it, because you couldn't have a board looking out for its own self, allowing that to happen.
Okay, here's the answer to the question, courtesy of NPR a week and a half ago.
Oh, Keurig, come on.
By the way, I go to the website of Keurig, and here's what it says. 100% of our K-Cups pods are recyclable. That's good news, other than the fact that it's wrong.
Yay.
Here is what NPR found. Keurig misled the public over claims that its K-Cups are 100% recyclable. The SEC says Keurig has agreed to pay $1.5 million in penalties after the SEC charged the company with making misleading statements about just how recyclable so-and-so.
I knew I heard it.
And the Keurig website still says it, and it's just not true.
Thank you. I knew I heard it somewhere, but thank you for the catch on that. I knew I heard it somewhere. I should stop listening to NPR.
It talks about the K-pods are made from recyclable plastic, also known as number 5 plastic, which I wonder why, if they're in the number 5 triangle at the bottom of the
I'm with the
Keurig
SEC
cups,
on this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
In any case.
Okay, you
so we're going to
guys-
stop using curd cups
Well,
tomorrow at the office?
you know what we should have? We should have the ones
Where you put the coffee
yes,
in
where
it.
you put the coffee in
Yeah,
it.
we'll be doing that.
Or the ones you can take
Oh, that's
back to
my
the
daughter
store.
got me that. Those are actually really good.
Yeah, that's what you can do
You got to
instead.
wash them, unfortunately.
Thank
afterwards.
you, you guys.
Hey, it's wonderful to see you. Let's hear it for
Thank you,
Juliette
and thank you
Kayyem.
for
Thank you
saving
so
me
much.
on the
Juliette,
curry cup.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have been speaking to Juliette Kayyem. She's former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and a contributing writer for The Atlantic, where her piece about political violence in the United States of America is running. Okay, up next, our media maven, Sue O'Connell, on Ellen DeGeneres' latest, dude influencers stumping for Trump and Vance, and Massachusetts school kids falling behind other states' school kids in post-pandemic, academic recovery. That's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 live for the Boston Public Library.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, the Healy administration is launching groups focused on addressing healthcare needs in communities hit by the closures of Stewart healthcare hospitals. Nonprofit leaders and activists say the city of Worcester is unfairly distributing ARPA funding. And over a year after sports betting was legalized in Massachusetts, illegal betting still thrives, and it lacks any of the guardrails for problem gamblers the legal system provides. That's starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Babson College. You can learn to lead with impact and become a driving force for change. Babson's graduate virtual open house is on October 9th. Registration at babson.edu/gradopenhouse. And Boston Medical Center, committed to delivering medical excellence that empowers all patients. Learn more about how BMC's team of experts is rewriting cancer care, sickle cell care, and beyond at bmc.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Last reminder about chicken nuggets. Text us at 877-301-8970. Sort of sick of pitching this, but apparently it's having a moment. Do you eat them? Do you like them? Where do you get them? And whatever. 877-301-8970. We'll read your finest contributions in about 20 minutes. Joined now at the library by our favorite local woman. Media. By the way, people still ask me, why do you say she's a local woman? Google Sue O'Connell and don't waste our time. Media maven Sue
We know
O'Connell.
why she's a media maven.
Yeah, we do know why. She's co-publisher of Bay Windows in the South End News and co-host with Corey Smith of NBC 10's Boston at Issue, which airs every Sunday at 11:30 following Meet the Press. Hello, Sue O'Connell.
Good day to you. Good day.
Good day to you.
Good day.
Okay. So before we ask you what you think of Ellen DeGeneres striking back, so-called mean, old, and gay, the Triple Crown, as she puts it.
I love it.
We'll play a little clip from the trailer of her second and last Netflix, or final apparently, Netflix comedy special, For Your Approval. It premiered last night, talking about a woman in the industry. Here it is.
Yeah, men can get away with acting out things that aren't actually happening and not look crazy somehow. A man in the middle of nowhere and for no reason can practice an imaginary golf swing. Oh, no, I'm not in line. I'm just waiting for my latte. You go ahead. Men will jump up and see if they can slap the top of a door frame. I've never had that urge.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah. What'd you think of it, and why is she calling this the mean, old, and gay, the Triple Crown?
Yeah, it was pretty fun. I mean, you forget that Ellen DeGeneres was a very solid sort of B, middle-of-the-road comedian, stand-up comic before her first shows. You know, she was on Carson. She was, generally everyone just liked her. She was funny enough. She wasn't over the line. She didn't deal with issues. She was like Seinfeld is in that observations of things that you can all relate to, regardless of who you are, what age you are. And then, of course, as everyone knows her story, she had a sitcom. She came out. She, as she rightly says, got kicked out of the entertainment business for being gay. Had a quick sitcom and then came back as the Be Kind to Everyone talk show host, daytime talk show host. Had a huge following, and then, of course, during COVID lockdown time, her staff said that it was a hostile work environment, and since her name was on the show, everyone blamed her for the hostile work environment. And I felt at the time, but it was COVID times and we had other concerns, but I felt like I didn't defend her enough during that period, during the hostile work environment.
Why would you defend her? Do you know?
Yeah, because...
Well, do we know if she was to blame for it? Or
she's to blame
the boss,
because she's the executive producer.
Okay.
Like we once talked about Lizzo not long ago with the lawsuits that are against her. You have these people who have not gone to business school.
Yep.
They have not been trained to be managers. They have not, and they don't train themselves because they have other things they're doing. And then suddenly they have staffs, and she tells...
That's the defense?
No, I'm getting there.
Oh, sorry.
She said in this comedy special, she was, chasing them. They had a complete series-long game of tag where she would chase her employees down the hallway, and some of them were scared of snakes, so she would rig it so snakes would drop out on the conference table. And she said, I know, it sounds like a horrible boss, right? But what I felt
Maybe we should try that.
That would be a good idea. Let's bring that to GBH.
I am scared of snakes, actually.
What I think I didn't defend her enough on is that, and this is one of those whataboutism moments. I worked in the industry the same time that she worked in the industry coming up. There are horrible men, and I'm not talking about like Harvey Weinstein, just basically horrible men who have talk shows, who have TV shows, who treat their staff terribly, and they are lionized. And because she said, be kind to each other, right? The level of
people are applauding first.
It was true. Think of Bill O'Reilly. You mentioned him. He was a nasty guy.
She's held to a different standard than everyone else, and I just think it was unfair.
Let me say the exact same thing I said 30 seconds ago. Mm-hmm. Is that a defense that men are cruel to their workers and get away with it?
No, I don't think that I think the allegations against her were serious for the few people that were involved, and I think part of it was in the Me Too movement. COVID was happening. There were reckonings happening everywhere. But she probably had one of the better sets of treating people in Hollywood, yet because she had said, be kind to each other at the end of every show, as she says, and because she's a woman, suddenly everyone turned on her.
Jim, come on. Men can be a-holes for decades and get away with it.
I agree. No, but that's my point. Let me be clear. I totally agree with that.
And if a woman is not liked, see you later.
Yep.
I mean, there's this huge double standard.
She says...
I mean, look at the two of us. You know what I mean? Look at the two of us.
No, let's not.
She says in the show, which is funny, first time I got run out of the entertainment business, it was because I was gay. Because there are no gay people in Hollywood. And then she said the second time was because I was mean. Because there are no mean people. I just think that she has been targeted.
I can't remember.
1995 or 6.
And what was the reaction? I don't have any recollection. What was the
She
reaction?
had a hit show. She came out. And the sponsors dropped her.
They did?
Yeah, the show actually got bad. I mean, just to be fair here, it went from being a very funny show to a mediocre show, and the ratings just went to the toilet. She was targeted by people like Jerry Falwell, calling her Ellen DeGenerate. She says, I never heard that before. And then she was out of the business and couldn't get hired anywhere. So she has been through this in a way that... Dave Chappelle hasn't gone through, and in a way that, a number of other male comics and male TV show hosts who have done much worse things, she has paid a higher price for it. And I'm sorry I didn't stand up for her more in the first place.
You don't know her, do you?
No, I met her once.
Okay.
Once.
All right, so that's Sue, and the special is out last night.
It's on Netflix. It's a nice middle of the road. It's not an issues thing. She does make fun of her situation, but you can watch it with your family, Jim.
Okay, so here's another woman. Let's see if you think she's being treated unfairly. Here's a video posted. You may remember Melania Trump. You remember her? She was the first lady. Maybe who knows if she'll be the first lady if he's elected again. She put out a video. We'll let you hear the sound, which I thought was odd. Not so much for content, but timing. And apparently it's also because she has a memoir coming out in early October. Here's a little sound from Melania Trump.
Why do I stand proudly behind my nude modeling work? The more pressing question is, why has the media chosen to scrutinize my celebration of the human form in a fashion photo shoot?
Excellent question.
We should honor our bodies and embrace the timeless tradition of using art as a powerful means of
Thank you. So the
self-expression.
question for me is, I mean, it's fine if she's proud of her nude modeling career. I'm totally with her, and we're all too, prudish in this society anyway. The question is, why, when your husband is 6 weeks away from an election, which would make him the president of the United States, do you start talking about how proud you are of your nude modeling career?
I have. I'll answer that, but first I want to
please.
ask you a question.
Please.
Nobody questioned her being a nude model.
Yeah.
It was barely a story the first time round, right? It was a few people made an issue of it, saying like, wow, if Michelle Obama had been a nude model, you would never hear the end of it. If any other person's wife had been a nude model, no one made fun of it. People defended her right to do it.
They did?
Yes, it was, she was a model, she was nude, what's the big deal, you know? And the Republicans ignored it, which was fine. So she is making this up, that the media was looking into her forum that she was doing.
It's very good imitation.
The second part of it is she just doesn't like Donald Trump, and I don't think she really cares whether he gets elected or not.
Do you think this is to screw him? Or
I think
she has a new
doesn't
book.
care about him.
I think it's partly about the book,
yeah,
too.
it's to promote the book. She doesn't care if he gets elected or not, and she's living her best life, regardless of whether he becomes our president again.
So I had read last night that she simply took Michelle Obama's book and put her name on it. Is that true?
That's what she
She
did,
has-
because it's a number
has
of
done
first
that.
ladies.
Okay.
You're going to hear from the Bush family. You're going to hear from Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, she's just living her best life without. She doesn't care about us. She doesn't care about Donald Trump. She doesn't care.
Well, if people have forgotten, she plagiarized Michelle Obama's speech at the convention when she was announcing her husband's candidacy.
I do agree with her though about the Christmas. Her statement about effing Christmas and who cares about Christmas ornaments that was recorded by her assistant and leaked around the White House Christmas decorations.
But I remember the Christmas decorations. They were
They were hideous.
They
and
were
red.
black and really dark.
She doesn't care about Christmas.
She doesn't care about Christmas.
I don't think she probably should have put herself on the same plane though as Michelangelo's David. Obviously famous.
In that video, she does.
Well, have you seen her nude photos? I would support that.
No, she looks. She's a beautiful woman. She's got a beautiful body, but I just don't think it's quite the same kind of level of art.
Well.
Okay. So speaking of her husband,
we're going to put Melania's nude photos up at the website, and you can all decide at home.
So one of the things that Trump and Vance have been doing is trying to appeal to young male voters who historically are not voters. They're eligible voters, and they're doing it. And this is, where was the story, by the way? It was actually a pretty good one.
I think it was NPR.
It was NPR, actually, because I heard it on the air and then I read it
Daniel Copeland.
about how they're going to sort of the bro podcast world, which I think is brilliant, actually, if they vote. Here's a little sound with Trump with Logan Paul on his podcast, talking about whether he believes in aliens, just one of the many topics in this hour-long interview. Here it is.
I've met with pilots like beautiful Tom Cruise, but taller, okay? Handsome, perfect people. Sir, there was something there that was round in form and going like 4 times faster than my super jet fighter plane. And I look at these guys, and they really mean it.
Yeah.
And am I a believer? No, I can't say I am.
I think it's brilliant. Again, it's a risky strategy because you don't know if they're going to vote.
But it's the only strategy. I mean, both of these candidacies, let's just take the crazy, how he's a nut job off the table and the policy issues, everything off the table. This entire race is going to be a race of inches for both Harris and Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to absolutely have every single one of their base come out to vote, and then all of the satellite constituencies that each of them have to come out to vote. So, Kamala Harris was doing the coconut tree, and she was doing Brad Summer. Donald Trump is doing these bro podcasts and influencers. As you mentioned, Jim, mathematically, they're not a good category to count on to come out to vote. But again, every single inch that they can make in any of their constituencies to get them out to vote. Now, the problem Trump also has is that, according to reports, his campaign doesn't have as many people on the ground in the swing states as they should in order to get the vote out. Of course, voting is starting now. And that's a concern that they have on the top line. Also, like yesterday, he gave a speech, and he said, please go out and do your early voting. And then seconds later, he talked about how bad early voting was. So it's kind of like paddling a ship with a hole in it, but this is a strategy that he should be employing.
So speaking of the forums that he and Vance have chosen to go to, I think all three of us on the air have been critical of Kamala Harris's unavailability to do mainstream press interviews. And tonight, I just read this morning, she's doing her first one-on-one, because remember the prior interview was with Tim Walz, her first one-on-one with a national person.
Stephanie Rule.
Stephanie Rule on MSNBC. And I have to say that I do not get this. There is not one person watching this interview tonight who is not voting for Kamala Harris.
However, I'll say this about one of the topics, right? What's one of the areas that the Harris campaign is weak on, according to voters, is the economy, right, and inflation. Stephanie Rule is an expert.
She's a business reporter.
The economy and inflation. And even though Stephanie had, I think it's clear to say, and it's MSNBC, leans toward Harris, Stephanie will be hard on Harris regarding how she answers questions.
So who's watching the show?
Well, it's not. No one watches anything. It'll be the clips.
Who's going to watch the clips from MSNBC?
They'll push them out.
Why is she not just doing? I mean, Van Jones made a really.
I agree with you. I think she should be
doing interviews.
More interviews sitting down. But I think this will be the first step around the issues that she's trying to make sure she's communicating to the voters.
You know, the reason I don't understand it at all. If you have something that you absolutely cannot answer, and you're a candidate, you attempt to hide out. I don't care if it's city council or president. There are only two tough, in my opinion, there are only two tough questions for Kamala Harris. What's your plan for the economy? And the question you didn't answer at the debate, are we better off than we were 4 years ago? I would assume she and her staff have a pretty good answer.
One would hope.
Now, and secondly, she's going to be asked about flip-flopping on things like fracking. She's got to come up with an answer if she wants to win Pennsylvania. She said her values are the same, et cetera. So you meet with your staff, you resolve those things, and then you go do every damn interview. And Van Jones made a wonderful point last night. If you don't know Van Jones, former Obama guy, he's on CNN, got $100 million from, Jeff Bezos to go do good things. He says, when talking about how she's doing poorly, and he didn't say that it was untrue, the polls. She's not doing as well as she needs to do with young black men. In fact, her support in the black community, which is incredible to me, is about 10 points lower than Joe Biden, who happens to be a white guy, and it's because of the young black men. He said, you should go do a tour of black barbershops. He doesn't mean 1,000 of them.
Right.
Go to 5 black barbershops around the country. Talk to the guys. Let people see you in that environment. This hideout strategy, if she had a 5 or 8 point lead and you're trying to protect it is one thing. Can you explain it to me?
No, I mean, I'm just thinking as you're talking, because if I were her campaign manager, I'm trying to identify pockets that I know I can get a higher turnout rate on, and I can use my energy to get there and do it. So there may be, and I don't know this, I've not talked to anybody on any of the campaigns about this, but there may be a strategy that she thinks she can't get those young black voters.
So don't waste your time.
So don't waste your time doing it. And spend the time in Michigan maybe getting Arab American voters, getting American Middle Eastern descent voters, making sure that you get all the women that will vote for you out. Taking advantage, this is the hard part I think her campaign has, of all the Republicans, including the Cheneys, who have endorsed her, plus all of the hard hawk military people who have endorsed her, and see if you can get any of those independents or Republicans who don't want to vote for Trump to not just stay at home, but to actually vote for you. So I imagine there's a big spreadsheet somewhere with probability of turnout, and then also how much time you have. Plus, look, she's got a ton of money. Not a lot of time left, but the campaign has a lot of money. We don't know what they might all of a sudden launch that will turn this around.
Well, you know what I love?
Place for her.
White women, I think, disgrace themselves by voting for him in 2016, again in 2020.
Well, as Hillary Clinton recently said in a podcast, she was told white women will let you down, and white women let Hillary Clinton down.
Black women never seem to get fooled. And good for them for sticking to it all these years. Anyway, let's talk about something else that is really upsetting, especially since we pride ourselves on having really good schools in Massachusetts. There's been a lot of learning loss post-pandemic. The Globe is reporting today that while other states are getting somewhere post-pandemic in terms of making up for learning loss, we are not. In Massachusetts, the MCAS scores are even worse than they were before, post-pandemic. So what do we make of that?
Well, part of the issue, according to the folks in charge of the MCAS, is that they have changed the MCAS. The MCAS is more difficult than it was the last time they did the MCAS. So therefore, there's an automatic attrition of expectation on the grade. So that's one level. The second level is, I think in our urban districts, in Boston and Lawrence and Lowell, where you have a number of students who are coming in where English isn't their first language. Many of them were harmed more deeply and severely by the COVID and by the pandemic and by the loss of learning. That's taking some time, obviously. Whether we're doing it right or not, I don't know, but that's impacting it. There's just the ongoing question about whether this test, any test, is the right thing to be doing instead of focusing on getting them the services and they need. I mean, I don't have an opinion on this either way, but you have a limited amount of resources. Should we be trying to get them up to the skills that they need to do, or should we be worrying about them being able to pass the test?
If I may, that's another debate, because despite what you say about the test getting tougher, the undeniable reality is they are comparing apples to close to apples,
right,
and the numbers are really disappointing.
Well,
the most
Mississippi and Florida can read better than our third graders.
The most troubling, that is hugely horrible.
Which is horrible.
What's equally horrible is what educators or defenders of our system, and by the way, Maura Healey has repeatedly said to us, you have to have the Secretary of Education on, you have to have one. We hope to have him on in the next couple of weeks to talk about this and other things. It's our fault for not reaching out to him. We apologize, but we're going to fix that. Tutwiler. The thing that is most disturbing, they attempt to say that, this was horrible loss because of the pandemic. Well, third graders who weren't affected in school by the pandemic are suffering in terms of results.
I would disagree with that.
Horribly.
I would absolutely disagree with that. I think every child born from 2020 on is impacted by the pandemic, and it may not be an immediate impact.
Not in school.
At home.
You mean in their life at home?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at education as this silo, then no, they weren't impacted. But if both their parents are dead, if they were staying with their grandparents and then they got isolated.
Well, most of them, in fact, were at home with their parents,
right,
or with a parent.
But I mean, there's the impact on your ability to learn and achieve in school isn't just because you were in preschool or kindergarten when the pandemic happened. I mean, I think this is the lesson of the pandemic in 20 years is going to be how deeply it impacted all of our children's ability to achieve. I argue that to go back and say, was that the right thing to do, is the wrong question, because we didn't know what the result would be. But now we know that any kind of disruption in a child's life impacts their ability to be a successful learner.
If I may, every single state in this country had experienced the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And comparatively speaking, Massachusetts was falling further behind in terms of standardized testing results than other states, which suggests we're doing something wrong here.
I agree.
Not to mention Marjorie's example of us falling behind the poorest state in the country, Mississippi. By the way, Secretary Tutwiler is booked for October 16th. That's a Wednesday here at the library, and we're really looking forward to it.
I believe, Jamie, I'm going to ask you to fact check, like I'm Juliette Kayyem here. I believe Mississippi had the highest rate of children who are insured medically as well.
I think that happens to be true, actually.
So, I think when we love to take a big victory lap here in Massachusetts about how wonderful we are, but there are a whole bunch of things that other states do better to care for children and make sure that they're insured. And then we look and say, well, why didn't this happen? It's because it's a holistic approach to taking care of children and families.
We have Mass Health here, though. I mean, Mass Health, I think, does a pretty good job.
If you can afford it.
What do you mean if you can afford it?
I think Mass Health is for poor people.
Oh, the Mass Health. I'm sorry. You thought that, yes.
Medicaid.
Yes, I agree.
It's Massachusetts Medicaid.
Yeah.
We only have a couple of seconds left, so we don't have time to go into the full. The guy who wrote the biography of Romney just did an interview with him.
I shouldn't have said poor people. People that,
it's all right. We know.
You know what I mean?
Low-income people.
Low-income people.
Don't end up like Ellen.
Okay, and older people who are, okay.
That's right.
What do you think of the fact that Mitt Romney, even though he has been outspoken for years about the horror of Donald Trump, has not been able to bring himself to say, I'm voting for Kamala Harris? He may not, I don't know if he is.
Mr. Flip-Flopper?
No, I'm serious.
No, I'm serious. I love, there are two Mitt Romneys, right? There's the Mitt Romney who met with the Massachusetts Log Cabin Group when he was running for governor and Senate and said he was going to support LGBTQ people. And then as soon as he became governor of Massachusetts, he was against gay marriage. There's the Mitt Romney who, just basically invented Obamacare, and then as soon as he gets to Washington as a Republican, he's against Obamacare.
Well, that's the answer to the
right?
question.
So he's a flip-flopper. I like one Mitt Romney who I nearly had a stroke during Black Lives Matter when he tweeted that he was marching and he did #BLM. But there's two Mitt Romneys.
And he's very conflicted.
By the way, before you go, our colleagues have looked up the highest percentage of kids in the country covered by Medicaid or CHIP are, listen to this, New Mexico, Louisiana, also one of the poorest states, Mississippi, Florida, and Alabama. I mean, it's a disgrace.
Yep.
Okay, Sue O'Connell, great to see you. Thanks so much. Bye.
Sue O'Connell, thank you very much, Media Maven Sue O'Connell.
Media Maven Sue O'Connell.
We have been speaking with, she's also our favorite local woman, Sue O'Connell, and publisher at Bay Windows and South End News, co-host with Corey Smith of NBC 10 Boston's At Issue, which you can see every Sunday morning following Meet the Press. It's on Channel 10 on most providers around here. Okay, up next, we've been soliciting your thoughts all day about, yes, the chicken nugget. We cover all the important issues on the show, Jim, and we'll read some of your best texts next. How do you feel about chicken nuggets? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, in her new memoir, Uzo Aduba, the award-winning actor whose work spans television, film, and theater, writes about the woman who made her success possible, her mother. An immigrant from Nigeria, Aduba's mother made sure her children were connected to their heritage and that they always had a sense of belonging, even in Medfield, Massachusetts, where Aduba grew up. She joins us to talk about her upbringing gave her the confidence to be who she is today. That and more on The Culture Show at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan, with you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And The Lyric Stage, presenting Urinetown the Musical. This musical comedy with a dreadful title is straight-faced silliness paired with cheeky musical parodies. September 20th through October 20th at Lyric Stage Boston. lyricstage.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. As you undoubtedly know by now, we've been soliciting your texts about the humble chicken nugget. Breaded, fried, served with some type of dipping sauce. Are they having a moment? According to Vox, they are. Sales of frozen nuggets in the U.S. topped $2 billion last year, and the global demand is expected to grow, topping $46 billion by 2032. For me, chicken nuggets have always been in vogue. It's a subject about which I have great expertise.
Yes.
Marjorie does not.
Well,
so, Marjorie, what's the verdict with the texters, and do you have a hot nugget take yourself?
Well, before we get to this, I mean, we wouldn't be talking about this if you didn't go someplace particular almost every day after the show. Jim, where do you go?
It's not, first of all, it's my business where I go. Okay, where I not every day. I occasionally go to McDonald's to get the 2 for $3.99.
2 for $3.99.
6 nuggets, hot mustard sauce with a McDouble. Let's move on. That's not the issue.
Okay.
I like chicken nuggets.
Yeah, well,
Do you know the difference between a chicken nugget and a chicken, before you read the text, and a chicken tender? This is from Cane's.
That's a chicken tender.
This is a chicken tender chicken finger. You know what the difference is?
It's real chicken.
It's got a real breast in it as opposed to chopped up crap processed stuff shoved into a nugget.
Well, you know, and people often call chicken nuggets chicken fingers too, but Drew on Aquidneck Island points out that chickens don't have nuggets or fingers either.
Very fine point. Thank you.
And you know, Ray in Norfolk says, a comedian said, what part of the chicken is the nuggets anyways? And that's a good question. Why do we call them chicken nuggets? However, we should point out that in 1983, chicken nuggets, they took the country by storm. The moment they were invented over at McDonald's, 5 million pounds sold every single week. And they kind of put these really creepy parts of the chicken, you know, together is what they do. This is like a real piece of chicken. This is not, I don't think.
The Cane's thing, not the chicken McNugget at McDonald's.
So I don't know, but and other people think that it's disgraceful that parents serve these food because they're very processed and they should be home grinding their own chicken and doing the breadcrumbs and all that.
Okay, so here's what Brian from Paxton texts. I have not been able to eat chicken nuggets since somebody found a fried chicken head in their order. I don't know if it was the nuggets or was it Kentucky Fried Chicken. Anonymous texter, chicken nuggets, I couldn't give a cluck. Now, let me tell you, we have often mentioned Jimmy Kimmel sending a reporter out to Hollywood Boulevard years and years ago to ask people which they preferred, Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, which of course were the same thing. Here is a piece of the introduction to that bit from Jimmy Kimmel.
Interestingly, the polls show that most Americans say they don't like Obamacare, but they love what's in it when it all gets broken down. It's like It's like the opposite of a McNugget.
That's a pretty good line. That is exactly what the situation is. And by the way, you know why they were created? I think it's sort of interesting, the history. In 1960s, this guy created them because there was all this scrap chicken pieces.
That's right. He wanted to help the
chicken farmers were in a bad strait, so they were trying to help them. That's exactly
scrap
it.
chicken pieces. That's what they did. Here is an anonymous texter. A McDonald's chicken nugget will survive the end of the world along with the common roach.
That's probably true.
Ooh,
How is the Cane's
appetizing.
chicken finger?
Well, it's not bad. Is this a Cane's chicken finger?
No.
It's not bad. It's like a real piece of chicken in there. So
It's
it's
really,
not like,
actually, it's pretty good.
And
the fried part, which is really good for you, is
a lot of
good
people
too.
say that Roach Brothers has really good ones. They're warm ones over there. Bell & Evans makes great ones, some people say. And then Dean Ashland says, in my opinion, McDonald's chicken nuggets are the best. But a few years ago, they came out with a fish nugget that was even better.
Well,
so I want to start a campaign to bring back the fish nuggets.
Tell that person I'm going to join that campaign like in a second. There's nothing quite like a fish nugget, even though I never had one at McDonald's. So could you sum up this discussion about the chicken nugget?
I think it's...
You ever had one, by the way?
Not in years, no,
Okay.
no.
When your kids were little.
Yeah, Trader Joe's supposedly has good ones too. That's what somebody says. They're also celiac safe as a bonus. But I think the summation is that we should be dutiful parents and not serve our kids all the food from McDonald's. But if you don't spend your kid's childhood half the time at McDonald's, I mean, you're not an American parent, are you?
Let me tell you, just drown it in dipping sauce and you're A-okay.
Yeah, what's your dipping sauce?
Mustard.
Hot mustard.
No,
okay.
That is the way to go.
All right. Thank
That's
you
it.
very much. I think we got to the bottom of the chicken nugget things.
not
A lot
really.
of people do eat them, even though they say they shouldn't eat them. Coming after the 1 o'clock news, the afternoon zoo with naturalist and author Sy Montgomery. She's going to tell us about swimming with giant mantas in Ecuador.
Woman? She's incredible.
And her take on the 8 bulls that is...
Unlock all NPR Plus podcasts by supporting GBH and enjoy exclusive perks like the Sunday Puzzle podcast, early access, and bonus episodes from some of your favorite shows. Learn more at gbh.org/NPR Plus.
Support for GBH comes from you and the International Conservation Fund, working to fight biodiversity loss and climate change by supporting local communities and indigenous peoples in their efforts to conserve nature globally. Learn more at internationalconservationfund.org. And The Huntington, presenting Tom Stoppard's Leopoldstadt, a stirring and epic story of love, family, and enduring bravery set in Vienna at the rise of the 20th century. September 12th through October 13th at the Huntington Theater, huntingtontheater.org.
Trusted, local, news. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. We're taking a breather from the dire headlines of the day to talk with Animal Authority naturalist and author Sy Montgomery. This week, she's going to tell us about a recent trip to Ecuador.
A brainworm. Your best get out of work excuses. You can call or text us at 877-301-8970. That's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Air sirens in Tel Aviv, warning of incoming Hezbollah rocket fire from Lebanon. Israel Defense Forces say they intercepted a surface-to-surface missile. Hezbollah says it is retaliating for last week's mass explosions in Lebanon involving communications devices. The IDF maintains it's targeting militants, but Lebanese officials say civilians are among the more than 500 people killed in airstrikes in the last 2 days alone. NPR's Jana Raff visited the Dar al-Amal hospital in the Bekaa Valley in central Lebanon. She sends this report.
We're in a hospital near Baalbek in the Bekaa Valley, in the room of one of the men who was wounded in an airstrike yesterday. He's actually a Syrian refugee, and he's here with his nephew. His nephew's 19 years old. He's lying on a hospital bed, his face bandaged, his leg bandaged, in huge amounts of pain. They fled Syria because they thought it would be safe in Lebanon. But as this points out, there's almost nowhere in the region that's safe. Jana Raff, NPR News, near Baalbek in the Bekaa Valley, Lebanon.
Crypto companies are burning a lot of cash in this election in the U.S., and they're supporting both Democrats and Republicans in federal elections. But as NPR's Maria Aspen explains, when it comes to the presidential election, former President Donald Trump is crypto's biggest convert.
3 years ago, former President Trump was pretty clear on his feelings about cryptocurrency.
Bitcoin, it just seems like a scam.
That was Trump on Fox News in 2021. But this year, Trump is running for president again on a very pro-crypto platform. He's gotten a lot of endorsements and millions of dollars of donations from crypto investors and founders. And he's joining their ranks. Last week, Trump and his sons launched a crypto business called World Liberty Financial. But now, Vice President Kamala Harris is also chasing the crypto vote. At a fundraiser this weekend, she signaled more support for what she called innovative technologies, including digital currencies. Maria Aspen, NPR News, New York.
Google says it has filed an antitrust complaint with the European Commission against Microsoft. The company alleges its rival is using unfair licensing practices to lock clients into Microsoft's Azure cloud platform, stifling competition and harming customers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 255 points, or more than 0.5%. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The owner of the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station is trying a new strategy to seek permission to release nearly 1 million gallons of water from the reactor system into Cape Cod Bay. The company has an appeal pending before the state. But in the meantime, it will include the water in separate permit renewal applications, says company compliance manager David Noyes. He refers here to a discharge pipe for reactor water that he calls Outfall 15.
The permit that is being submitted closely mirrors the permit amendment request, so it includes Outfall 15. That application is due to be submitted by the end of this year.
Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection already denied an application to discharge radioactive water from Pilgrim. The matter is going to state adjudication, similar to a court case. And according to an analysis of Federal Census Bureau data, Vineyard Haven on Martha's Vineyard has the highest median home cost in the country. Surprise, surprise. And that's among communities between 10,000 and 50,000 people, according to the report that was compiled by Lending Tree. The median price for a home in Vineyard Haven, just over $998,000. And towns in Wyoming, as well as Colorado, ranked second and third. Red Sox, one more game against Toronto, then it's back to friendly Fenway to wrap up the regular season. Clouds mid-60s today, cloudy low 50s overnight, showers on tap tomorrow, temperatures in the upper 60s. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, home of the Name Your Price tool, so drivers can see coverage options at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. We're joined now on Zoom by naturalist author Sy Montgomery. Her forthcoming book is What the Chicken Knows, a new appreciation of the world's most familiar bird. It comes out in November. And we will join Sy, Marjorie and I will join Sy in conversation at the Arts at the Armory in Somerville. That's on November 6th. That's the day after the election, in celebration of the book's launch. Information and tickets available at thewilbur.com/armory. We're really looking forward to it. Sy, it's great to see you.
Oh, man, I can't believe you all are doing that for me.
I know.
We can't believe you're doing it with us. We are so psyched.
Yeah, we are very happy to be doing it. So tell us about going to Ecuador and swimming with these giant, how do you pronounce it, mantas?
Giant manta rays.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I've been wanting to do this we figured this out. It's like I've been wanting to do this for 8 years, but various things, including COVID, intervened. These animals are humongous. They can stretch 26 feet from wingtip to wingtip. And they make birds look awkward because they have no bones. They just have cartilage. They look like they are flying like angels through not the heavens, but the sea. And I got to work with Michelle Guerrero, this Ecuadorian researcher who discovered the largest aggregation of these giant oceanic manta rays in the world back in 1996. And they're off this remote island, an hour and 15 minutes or so by punishing boat ride from the mainland, called Isla de la Plata. And they only come during this short period of about 4 weeks in August and September. And no one really knows much about these huge plankton-eating relatives of sharks, but they're smart. They live like 70 years, and they're curious, and they will come up to you and look you in the eye. It's the most amazing thing. They'll even come to divers when they are injured by a hook or they're caught in fishing gear. And Michel has had this happen to him. They'll come up to him and essentially ask for help. And he will disentangle them, and then off they will go, released from their burden, but then they'll circle around to see him again, as if to say thank you. And so I'm working on this book. It was the toughest diving I've ever done. And I haven't even done that much diving. I've done maybe, 20 dives most of which were 10 years ago. But this was in like this fire hose current. It's the Humboldt current that comes up from Antarctica, cold, fast current, laden with delicious plankton that everyone eats. But you're like swimming in this fire hose of soup, basically live animals many of them are really tiny. So it all looks like you're seeing everything like through a mirror darkly or through some kind of mist. And so we'd be hanging on to these rocks underwater at 45, 50 feet, although we dove deeper than that. You're clinging onto the rocks so that you won't be swept away. And waiting to see if the mantas come. And you look up and all of a sudden there's this like smudge above you. And it's somebody who's like 15, 16, 20 feet or more across. And they come swooping towards you like some alien spaceship. And they care about you. They're interested in you. And they'll circle around and they'll get another look again. And one manta stuck with us for an entire, almost hour-long drive.
Wow.
Just looking at us as he circled past and checked us out. It was amazing. So what we were doing with Michelle Guerrera and Mantas Ecuador and these two wonderful researchers who joined us from Costa Rica was he's trying to get close photographs of all of them so that they can tell individuals. They're tagging them so that you can follow and find out where do they go, what do they do, how deep do they dive. He's watching them get cleaned by all these cleaner fishes, which is why they go there for that period. They go there like to the spa to get somebody to eat all your parasites off.
Oh, God.
I know. I wish I could go. Maybe I'd look as good as you. Never. But anyway, you're waiting, thinking, can you do my nails for me or something? But anyway, we take tissue samples as well. I mean, I basically was just watching and trying not to drown. But we worked with actually two of my good friends from Marshfield are helping me with it, Deb and Patrick Joyce. And Patrick is a photographer, and he was helping Carolina get pictures of these individuals and try to find out, where do they go and what do they do. And, they're pretty sure that they come here to get cleaned by these cleaner fish, but where do they go from there? And why do they even leave?
First,
how deep do they go?
Are we going to see video of this at some point, I hope? Are we?
Yeah, I sent you guys some. I sent some via Zoe, and I'll send it again after this.
We'll figure out how
you'll see me spazzing out because I'm just trying to hold on to the rock.
That's what I have a bunch of questions for you. I don't, all the years we've known you, I don't think I've ever asked you this question. Were you scared?
No.
Why?
I wasn't scared of that.
No, why were you scared? What? But you're not an experienced diver, even though you've had 20 more dives than I have. You're diving in these incredibly difficult conditions, not to mention having, I just looked it up, 7,000-pound animals swimming around you. Why were you not scared?
Well, they're plankton eaters. They're not going to bother me. And happily, I was with my friends, and I knew that no one wanted me to drown because who was going to write the book?
Exactly.
It's a hell of a... Okay, here's my next thing. Is you told the story. We spoke on the phone a few weeks ago, and before you went, you told the story about them coming to humans for help. How do they know to come to a human for help? Unless they had a prior experience in which they were either entangled or in danger in some fashion. What's in them that causes them to know that that human thing will provide assistance to them?
I don't know, but they do live a long time. They can live to 70.
Wow.
And they learn, that gives you an opportunity to learn stuff. And they are curious enough that they have watched human divers.
I see.
And they may have seen, human divers helping another animal. So who knows? I mean, whales too are known to do this. Oh, and that's the other thing, you guys. Oh my God. Out there, you're down. When I send you the video, you'll have to turn up the sound because besides my own Darth Vader breathing, you can hear whales singing. There's all these humpback whales down there, and you don't see them. You see them above when you're on the punishing trip across the waves going bam, bam, bam for an hour and 15 minutes. And these big pickles are jumping out of the water, and those are the humpback whales. And then when you stop your boat, once you get out of the first dive and you have to off gas so that all the nitrogen doesn't mess up your blood, who comes to see you but all these green sea turtles? It's just the most magical experience. And while you're clinging onto the rock and you're not seeing mantas, you're looking around you and you're seeing all this amazing life from, both spotted and green morays, who you just got to be careful you don't upset them because they have a lot of backward pointing teeth. And if you put your hand in their hole, they might not like that.
Yeah.
But there's beautiful butterfly fishes. And you see I'll send you a picture of one of the mantas being trailed by this cloud of yellow butterfly fish that, they're doing hair and makeup, basically. They're cleaning this manta of all of its parasites. They even go in your gills and will go inside to get rid of those pesky parasites that get in your gills. And we all know how uncomfortable that can be.
Wow. I had never, other than I never even heard of giant mantas until you and I spoke before you left for Ecuador. I looked them up again last night.
They're huge.
For you haven't seen them, not only are they incredibly huge, the closest I could describe, I want to know if you thought this comparison was fair, for people who've seen photographs of stealth bombers from below, they look like an animal version of a stealth bomber, and they actually don't look much smaller than a stealth. You're nodding in agreement. Do you agree? Do you agree?
No, you're right. I mean, I've heard people say they look like an alien spaceship about to land.
They do. They're incredible.
They really do. And they have these funny cephalic fins that stick out of their heads. You don't expect to have fins coming out of your head to start with. But then at the base of the cephalic fins is where their eyes are, and their gills are on their belly. And we found a pregnant one swimming around and checking us out. But guess where their pregnancy shows? Not in their belly like us, but if it was us, the small of their back.
Oh my God.
So they're just put together in this incredible way that you look at them and you realize, anything is possible.
What does it feel? Well, you're incredible, but what does it feel? You're there, you're underwater, the current's like it is, and all of a sudden, one of these 6,000 to 7,000 pound, incredibly beautiful creatures appears, and then another one. Can you describe what that moment is like, Sy Montgomery?
You know what I reckon? I think it must be like, when you read the passages in the Old Testament and the New Testament when an angel shows up, and often that's the way that people feel. They describe it as afraid, but that's kind of not really the right word. It's just awe. It's total awe that you can be in this place at this time with this creature. It's such an amazing privilege. And you're in their world, and they're not only letting you be there, but they're interested in you, and that you merit their interest. It's as if, an angel came down and was interested in having a conversation with you.
We're talking to Sy Montgomery, just back from Ecuador, and we'll try to figure out a way to show you in a future show here the video that Sy is sending along.
So, Sy, on a different topic, we talk a lot about climate change and the threats to extinguish the lives of all these different species. What are they doing with these birds? Explain what's going on in this Kansas shipping container out in the middle of this cattle pasture.
Yeah, this was so interesting. This was Guam kingfishers. They're these beautiful little birds, similar to the kingfishers that we see around here, but they're unique to Guam. But they're gone in the wild because introduced snakes ate them all. These Guam tree snakes that came in World War II on aircraft landing there. But they have been bred in captivity. Well, you can't put them back in Guam because they can't get rid of all of these Guam tree snakes. So they're thinking of putting them in a completely different place where they've never been before, Palmyra Atoll. And this is emblematic of what the lengths to which environmentalists and scientists are going to try to preserve animals who you cannot reintroduce to their original homes. And it is different from, for example, the reintroduction of wolves in North America. Wolves always lived there. It's not like bringing the rhinos back to East Africa. Rhinos used to be there. This is putting someone in a place where they've never been before because they can't go back to their native place. And it's already been done. It was done with my friend's turtles. It was done with these turtles in Australia. It was just getting too hot. These were swamp turtles. They're very attractive, of course, as you can imagine. And they were thought to be extinct, and then they were rediscovered. There was just a handful of them left, so they started breeding them in captivity. But if you release them back to where they came from, the reason they were going extinct was it was just too hot and the water was no good. So they're trying to move them 200 miles south to a place where they probably have never been. And increasingly they're thinking to try this with other animals.
So the term for this, which I'd never heard of till last night, is called assisted migration.
Yeah.
And I understand for a species, I think I understand, that for a species about to go extinct, there's no downside, because the worst that happens is they die in the new environment, and they would have died or become extinct in the old environment. But obviously they're also introducing, I hope I use the right terminology, introducing this bird into an ecosystem. Is that the right, you know what I mean? A new environment.
Oh, absolutely.
Where, how do they know that the pre-existing animals that are there on this atoll or whatever it is, that they're going to be able to continue to exist with a species that is naturally part of that? You know what I mean? I didn't express it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That is such a good question, and people do worry about this. There was an attempt to save Tasmanian devils who were beset with a contagious cancer. They bite each other in the face and give each other cancer, and they were like dying out. And so a few years back, scientists thought, oh, well, let's take them to this other island in the Tasmanian Sea and let them go. And the devils were fine, but they ate all the penguins.
Oh, really? That's exactly what I was talking about. So
Exactly.
what does one do about that?
Well, it's a hard decision. I mean, obviously, the smart people who reintroduced the Tassie devils didn't think about it with the penguins, and there were these other other birds too, who just were completely wiped out. I mean, what I would try to do probably would do a soft release in which you release them to a fenced area, you radio tag them or radio collar them so that if something bad starts happening, you can recapture them and bring them back, and kind of do a test run that way. I guess that's the best that you can do. But we've so overrun the world and ruined the climate that I totally understand why people are being moved to try these ideas that otherwise would have been considered crazy. But if we're going to save these species, we got to try some of it and just be as careful as we can.
You know, before we move to the next topic, I'm doing something that I always tell people who are new to the business not to do.
What's that?
Don't be looking at something on your screen that is unrelated to what you're talking to your guest about. I'm watching videos, you're speaking of these giant mantas. So beyond the fact, and I can't wait to see your video, that they are as huge as we describe, they don't swim, they fly through the water. Yes. I mean, they fly. What are those things, fins or
They're
what are?
Called wings. They're called wings. They are.
Oh my God,
big
it's
wings.
incredible.
I know, and they look like they're swimming in slow motion.
Yeah.
But they swim very rapidly. And they do remind me of angels because here they are, you know, this being, this otherworldly being winging their way through not the blue heaven, but the blue sea. And their grace is enough to make you weep. You know, you look at a bird with its clumsy bones, and birds are the epitome of grace, and yet compared to this fish, you know, they look clumsy. I'm glad you're looking at those videos. They're just amazing, and I'm sure they're better than what I have. I didn't shoot this video. The folks next to me were shooting the video, and because you know when you try to send some video, it has to be really short. They're very short, but I can't wait to share some of them so that you'll meet some of the animals that I met.
You know, before Marjorie moves to the next topic, Mike in Boston just texted.
Yes.
Are you going to read it? Go ahead. I didn't know you'd seen it.
Why can't we all have the joy in our work that Sy Montgomery seems to have?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and the person two texters above, Karen in Whitensville, says, I love Sy's excitement about everything she talks about. We should all find something that gives us as much passion and happiness as Sy finds in the world. How about that?
It's beautiful. It's true,
so,
too.
So, Sy, I have been waiting all week to talk to you about this bull stampede down in North Attleboro. Turned on the news that night, or I think I actually saw it online. There was a rodeo at the Emerald Square Mall, and 8 bulls escaped, went right through a metal fence, and began running at quite a gallop, or maybe a canter anyway, right toward Route 1. And apparently some of them crossed Route 1. So what are we to make of this? You are the animal expert. They couldn't get away from the rodeo fast enough, or they
yes,
were like...
I think that is it. I mean, they don't like this. They do not like the rodeo.
Yeah.
They normally bulls don't walk around bucking all the time. They're bucking because they don't like it. They have a cinch on their belly. They're bred to be exceptionally oversensitive to the feeling of being squeezed and touched and spurred. I mean, that's enough to make me buck to start with. But these guys, they're all like super, super sensitive to that because the rodeo wants them to buck. And they obviously... They knew what was going on. This was not their first rodeo. And so they just broke out. And I loved watching it too. I loved seeing, their powers surging out with their great big horns. And I loved it. I mean, right away they caught one, but then there were then they caught everybody else a little bit later. And I think it was just either yesterday or the day before, they finally caught the last one who was at a mall.
Yeah, but they were traveling in a pack. So that's what they usually do, bulls? I mean,
yes. Well, cows, all the bovines are herd animals, and they generally like being together. And that's a good strategy if you are a hoofed animal. Hooves are evidence that someone is trying to eat you, and hooves let you run away from them faster.
So we should not like all those shows about the bucking bronco and the rodeos and out west. I mean, that's
no. I think we should all enjoy the mechanical bulls that you can get on. And that's pretty fun to watch. And you're not making somebody so uncomfortable or terrified or in pain that they will do anything to make this stop.
Speaking of terrified, I think you can allay some of the fear that some of us are feeling. We're about, as I think you know, we're about 4 blocks from Beacon Hill here. And here's a breaking news from the Boston Herald. There is a Joro spider spotted on Beacon Hill. The Herald sent arachnid researcher Andy Davis photos of the spider spotted in Beacon Hill. Davis confirmed the large black and yellow spider is in fact a Joro. That's definitely a big fat female Joro spider, said Davis, a research scientist at Georgia's Odom School of Ecology. First one I've heard of in that area and the most northern sighting yet. So I guess 2 questions. 1, do we have anything to fear? And 2, if it is the most northernmost sighting, is this yet another move because of climate change?
Boy, I would not be surprised. But then, introduced species just have a tendency to go everywhere. The Joro spider is not a problem. I mean, it can come.
Wait, not a problem for you or not a problem for us?
It won't bite you. It won't hurt you. And as far as folks know, they don't pose any danger to native spiders. They're pretty shy spiders, but they're showy. And, the spider you can see is the spider you want to have.
Yeah.
And particularly if you're afraid of spiders, because otherwise you're just going to be afraid that spiders are everywhere. This is why I like tarantulas. They're big enough that you can see them.
Oh, love them.
Now, wait a second. On that note, we weren't going to get to this today because we're running out of time. But since you mentioned it, there's a story about, where was this? Some library in Massachusetts. There was a 20-year-old tarantula.
Yeah, we don't have time.
That just died. But we'll discuss the story more next time. But the one question I was dying to ask you, but since you brought it up, you're not scared of them either?
No. I know which ones you can pick up. And this was a Chilean rosehair, and they're very gentle.
How do you know which ones you can pick up and which one? You just feel it? You're like a tarantula whisperer or what? Now, what is it?
There's certain species that are known for their gentleness, and the Chilean rosehair is one. And there's a pink toe spider, beautiful spider that you can, tarantula that you can also pick up. There's lots of them that won't bother you at all. So, and this was a beloved spider, and she lived to 20, which is about as long as that species lived, and was given a funeral, which I think is very dear.
Oh,
Beezus
like
was
Charlotte
the name.
in Charlotte's Web that was so mourned when she died. By the way, so you mentioned spiders you can see you shouldn't worry about. So daddy long legs, you can see those in the corners of your house. We shouldn't worry about.
Obviously, she has some in her house.
Yeah, I've seen.
No. Well, if you've been to my house, you probably saw.
I meant Marjorie's house.
Yeah, I've seen some daddy long legs. Yeah, down the Cape. They're all over the place in the corners. But we shouldn't worry
daddy
about
long legs, you can pick them up. They won't bother you.
Okay, I'll be picking them up. Okay. Now, Sai, we're going to figure out a way, and we'll let people know by Friday how we're going to get this video in front of their eyes. We're not sure how we're going to do it, but we are. Sai, welcome home. We can't wait to talk more, and we can't wait till November when we see you in person in Somerville. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Sai. We have been speaking with naturalist Sai Montgomery. Her forthcoming book is What the Chicken Knows, a new appreciation of the world's most familiar bird. It comes out in November, and Sai's going to join us in conversation, as Jim mentioned, at the Arts at the Armory in Somerville on November 6th in celebration of the book's launch. Information and tickets available at thewilbur.com/armory.
Can I read one more text?
Sure.
Anonymous, I've always said that if I could sit down with 5 people, dead or alive, to eat a meal together, Sy Montgomery has always been on that list.
I know.
For me.
I know.
She is just one of a kind.
Otherworldly to talk to her.
She is.
Okay, up next. It's not just RFK Jr. Brainworms are rare, elusive, and life-altering. They also make a pretty convenient excuse, Jim, for missing work events or deadlines. We're going to open the lines to ask you about your tried and true excuses to skip work. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
when the news matters.
Some officials say non-residents are making it hard for locals to find shelter space.
GBH News sticks with the story.
The outside of Quincy's Wollaston T Station has recently seen migrants sleeping overnight.
Continued coverage and in-depth analysis at your fingertips.
Many of them fleeing violence and economic upheaval in Haiti.
GBH News 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Boston Speakers Series, with its new season starting soon at Symphony Hall. 7 evenings featuring Liz Cheney, Supreme Court correspondent Nina Totenberg, and historian Annette Gordon-Reed. Information at bostonspeakersseries.org. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from medical bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back here on Friday. We're ending the show today with a check-in on excuses. We've all been there. We committed to something. Maybe it's as simple as a drink after work. Maybe it's work itself, and you just don't want to do it. What type of the dog ate my homework far-fetched excuse do you drum up in your daily life to get out of things you don't want to do, particularly work? Our number to call or text is 877-301-8970. Our excuse for not thinking of a better topic idea. I actually like this one, but some don't. To end the show today, you know what it is, Marjorie? Brainworm.
Brainworm.
Come to think of it, our excuse for just about everything these days is brainworm. Marjorie forgot to prepare for the segment. Brainworm. I haven't shaved my beard.
Brainworm.
Zoe still has a job after writing this horrible script.
Brainworm.
Exactly. So that's the deal for us. What is your go-to excuse for skipping work, skipping an event, skipping class, whatever? 877-301-8970. And we're inspired by some of the best ever that were in Reader's Digest. I wasn't even aware Reader's Digest was still published,
around.
But it is. Now, before you read some of those, your favorite excuse was mine, a former Red Sox player. Who was that?
Oh, Manny Ramirez.
And what would he say?
Well, his grandmother died. The problem was his grandmother died multiple times.
Repeatedly,
he had
she
to go
did.
back to the Dominican Republic for her funeral. Didn't he say it like about 4 or 5 times?
He said it
and
a
get
lot
away
of
with it?
times.
So
He
somebody
did.
finally said, "Didn't she die 6 months ago, Manny?" And then Manny had to fess up. But there's some very funny excuses on here. Listen to this one. An employee said he had to attend the funeral of his wife's cousin's pet because he was an uncle and a pallbearer. How about that one?
That would go for me. Yeah. What else?
Employee said someone glued her doors and windows shut so she couldn't leave the house to get to work.
An anonymous texter said, my mother has had 2 heart attacks. My mother-in-law has died 3 times. My dog has been in the vet. My cat got hit by a car. I have no animals. And when I have a male boss, I just talked about my periods. 877-301-8970. I have not done this, of course, as an adult.
Of course not.
But do you have a go-to excuse when you really?
Well, when I was a kid, I did something. But
Like what, for
mine's
example?
not so much fun. These are much better.
Okay.
An employee had a lucky night and didn't know where he was in the morning. How about that
That's
one?
not bad.
Yeah. An employee couldn't come to work because she accidentally got on an airplane.
So Marjorie's very amused. 877-301-8970. The key, by the way, in my opinion, is if you're calling in sick, here's the key. 1, you have to perfect the I'm not feeling very well voice. And you know what you have to say? I'm going to come in anyway. In which case, most bosses who are compassionate and also don't want you to infect your colleagues, they say, don't bother. Stay at home.
That's right.
Come back when you're feeling better.
Here's a good one. Sean from the car. GI issues. Nobody wants to hear anything about it. And then somebody else said, every time there's a Monday morning 8 a.m. staff meeting, I forget to prepare for. I say, my daughter missed the school bus.
I like
That's
it.
a good one, too, especially if you live in Boston, because the buses are all like an hour late to come and pick you up. 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. Down on the road says, I can't use this one anymore, but my excuse was, I was out trying to catch the escaping bulls in Attleboro.
It works for a while. Let's go to Carolyn Revere. Do you have a go-to excuse for when you're missing work or whatever it is? Hello, Carol.
I could only use this once.
Okay, what is it?
I had overslept. I had a crappy boss. So when I got to work late and glaring at me, I said, hey, it was trash day. My trash bag broke. I had to repackage all the trash to get them to the curb.
I think that's an excellent.
That's a good one
because that's believable.
Yeah, mundane. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah, but that's you only use that once.
You can only use it once. So. It's true.
Did it work?
Yes.
Okay, well, there you go. So one and done, and move on to the next one.
How about
Carol,
this one,
thanks
Jim?
for the call.
My false teeth flew out the window while driving down the highway.
I like that. Did you know Reader's Digest still existed?
I didn't know.
Didn't Reader's when you used to go to your dentist's office when you were like 20 years old, there was a Reader's Digest, and they're still around apparently.
Here's another one.
She doesn't care.
This employee said
I don't care either.
come
Actually,
to
I don't know why I
work.
brought it up.
Listen to this one.
What is it?
His fortune teller asked him not to step out of the house or he would suffer a brain hemorrhage, so he had to stay home.
I like it. Marjorie is so abused. If you're not watching on streaming, she is loving these things.
I like the creativity. I think it's just wonderful. Okay, listen to this one. My wife's boss called out because her garage door would not open. However, she takes the tea to work.
Okay, let's go to Robert in Worcester. We're talking about go-to excuses that may be of value to other people who are in need of a go-to excuse. Take it away, Robert. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I think we're good.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep,
I think so, yeah.
We're ready for your excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my excuse is this right here. I got a very bad headache or migraine.
That's a good one.
And I learned it from the best of people.
Yeah?
Who was it?
My ex-girlfriend, my wife, I talk about my mother. I learned it from a woman. They told me that a migraine gets you out of everything.
Now, Robert, did any of those women have migraines, or they were making it up too?
I don't know. I don't know if they had a migraine or not, but
I think I do know. Robert, when they called you on the phone and say, Robert, I'd love to see you today, but I have a migraine, I would have my suspicions. Robert, your connection's horrible, so we got to let you go. Thanks for the call. 877-301-8970. A migraine is a headache is a fairly
that's a tough one.
Sympathetic and good thing kind of deal.
Here's a good one. One employee didn't show up for work because they forgot that they'd been hired for the job.
Okay. Listen to Marjorie. There's certain things, if you know her through the radio, there's certain things that really tickle Marjorie's whatever.
Yeah.
And this obviously does. 877-301-8970.
Here's one from Marianne from Nashua. I always want to call in well. Say, I'm feeling too good today to waste my day. I'm going to work.
By the way, is honesty like a decent excuse? Unless you have something on your agenda which really matters to your work product or to your boss, wouldn't it be refreshing to say, I can't do this today, or I just don't want to do this today?
Or say you need a mental health day.
Yeah.
I mean, some people do that. I don't know how well it goes over with the boss.
I don't know either.
Mental health day,
if anybody's done that, give us a call. We'd like to know if honesty is a reasonable alternative here.
Patrick from Northborough, what do you think?
Hey, Patrick.
Hey, how are you guys? Great to hear you. I
we're good.
Always listen and sustain, and first time to call in, so thanks for taking it.
Yeah.
My excuse is always honesty. It's too nice out today. I don't want to go to work. It's too cold out. I'm staying home. I don't know. Go with honesty. Why not? We all deserve it.
And how do the employers or the people to whom you report, how do they react to the honest approach there, Patrick from Northborough?
Well, to be fair, I work for myself, so my clients get a little mad, but they know me well enough to know that, you know what, it's a nice day. He's probably going to cancel, so it's fine.
Well, actually, it's sort of charming. The honesty and the thing is sort of a charming kind of...
Oh, you guys are charming, too.
Thank you, Patrick. That was very nice back and forth there. Thank you. Call us again. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
Here's Jared in Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
I was late for fill in the blank because Jim Browdy stole my parking space.
I don't think that's really Jared. It may be really Jared because Jared really believes that, so that is a possibility.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go?
Listen to this person. This is an honest person who says our excuses are much too elaborate for her or him. We're all running around like chickens with our heads cut off. I tell the truth and say I've had a crazy week and decided to stay at home and relax and kick back at home. I don't think that would work.
So let me ask you a question. Let's put this to the test here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's assume we're about to go to work and we have a tough day because it's a lot of preparation to do this fabulous show.
Yep.
And let's say, I don't know, let me pick someone at random.
Jim.
Jamie.
Jamie.
were to call us at like 7 o'clock. He's sitting there, so you can look at him. And Jamie says, I really feel like I want to stay home today because it's beautiful. How sympathetic would you be to the cause?
More sympathetic than you.
That is correct. That is exactly what my answer was going to be. So honesty works some places, not others. Mary in Salem, we're talking about go-to excuses.
Says his finger hovers over the call button every single morning.
But you notice he doesn't hit it, if you know what I mean. Mary, he also said, when he said he was in Italy with his family for 2 weeks, did you believe any of that?
We're suspicious, apparently. Didn't Jamie call out sick for like a week when he wasn't sick? I felt like it was a running joke at one point, and he may have been in Italy.
Or vice versa. Let's go to Mary in Salem. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Hi there, Mary.
Hello.
Hi.
I had a small business in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I had a person call me.
Yeah.
And say, I've got bowel issues. I'm going to send you a picture. I said, hold on. Hold on. And he sent me a picture. We've got a problem here. And sent me a picture not only of his own bowels, but his wife's bowels.
Oh, that's fabulous.
My God.
That is really a heartwarming story.
Unbelievable.
So what'd you do? What'd you do?
I said, I can't burn this out of my brain now. Yes, you still have a job. Obviously, you're very concerned, and I hope you get better.
Well, that's very kind.
And I could not believe it. I just couldn't believe it.
Well, that's a hell of a move by the employee, and apparently it worked. Mary, thank you very much for the call there. We appreciate it.
An employee hurt his back chasing a beaver.
Here she goes. Okay, let's go to...
listen to this one. An employee woke up in a good mood and didn't want to ruin it. How about that one?
By the way, here is the first excuse of all these that actually would work. Here's an anonymous texter. Let me know what you think of this, Marjorie. Mm-hmm. I'm late because I'm waiting in line at Ticketmaster trying to get tickets for the library show of Boston Public Radio.
Okay. Yeah,
by the way, if you're not sure if you need tickets, if you go to our TikTok page, courtesy of Nicole, our coworker at Boston Public Radio, you will see Marjorie and me give the definitive answer to the ticket question.
Here's a good one.
What is it?
When in doubt, I have COVID. That works every time, doesn't it? I had COVID 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, but you worked when you had COVID. Oh, you didn't work every day because you were horrible.
I worked the first day, and then I was down for the count.
Problem with the COVID thing, I think...
You can't come out of the house.
You can't, right. If you're seen anywhere, then your whatever is blown, your cover kind of thing. So, I don't know. Oh. Also, do you know, I have to say, it makes me nervous. Like, for example... Some people say their kid is sick. It's very hard to say that you're to a parent who works for you who says, my kid is sick, that you got to come to work. I had a thing when I don't know where we were working at the time. I don't even know if I was working with you at the time. Maybe it's superstition or something. I don't like doing those kinds of things.
No, you think it's going to make your kid, you're going to get payback.
Yeah, you feel the same way or not?
Well, that was never a good enough excuse. They didn't care if your kid was sick.
I mean, if you're a woman, it wasn't a good enough excuse.
It was not a good enough excuse. You had to get to parents in a pinch or something like that to come in and take care of the kid. That used to be like $25 an hour. It's probably now $45 an hour. But no, your sick kid was
just
not
doesn't
usually,
seem right.
It doesn't seem right. It's kind of like saying your mother's, had a heart attack or your mother's still alive. Or like Manny
What if your
Ramirez?
mother's dead and you say she had a heart attack? Is that okay in that circumstance?
That's better.
Yeah.
Or Manny Ramirez. Was his grandmother that he blamed for her funeral over and over again? Was she dead or alive, Jim?
Did he even have a grandmother? As far as we know, who would know? Okay. By the way, we would not recommend sending a photo of your bowels to your employer like that woman described to us a minute ago. Karen in Wareham, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Well, I think we're good. Thank you.
Good. I'm loving this. It's totally ridiculous, but hysterical.
Thank you.
And I am calling because I haven't heard this one by anybody else. But we have what's called a wind exclusion clause down here.
Which means?
So if you have something you're supposed to be doing, whether it's a social engagement or a work thing, you can always say, yeah, but it depends on the wind, because we're on Buzzards Bay, and if the wind is blowing and you want to go sailing or surfing or kiting or whatever, you're just plain not going to make it because your priorities are wind sports.
What do you think of that?
And it works?
Always.
Listen to that. Dramatic pause, always, she says.
Okay. All right. That's a good one, Karen. Thank you.
By the way, do you see what Nicole just wrote us? The joke is that Jamie was going to call out sick when he was where'd you go to New Hampshire, Montreal?
Yeah, that's right. Go to see the solar eclipse.
So what are you saying? Did you call you lied to get out of work for that? I think he lied to get out of work for that. I think I remember him calling in sick. Well, that's a problem.
Okay, listen to this one.
HR is on the phone, actually. So take that call, Jamie, will you please?
An employee caught their uniform on fire by putting it in the microwave to dry and could not come to work.
Who has that not happened to, by the way? Have you not had that experience? Let's go to Jill in a car. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Jill, what's up?
Hi.
Hi.
I don't want to say who I work for,
but
but it's a government entity.
Uh-huh.
And they were cracking down on people being late coming to work, and they considered late and sick the same thing. So when I pulled into the parking lot, I realized I was going to be late. So I turned around, drove home, and called in sick from home because that was before cell phones.
Oh, very good. That's a good one.
I figured if I was being accused of it, might as well take the day.
Well, you're sticking it to the
Jill,
man. I'm with that, Jill.
Do they still say bang it in? A lot of my friends who work for the state, they didn't say they were calling in sick. They were
do.
banging
That's a
in.
union term.
Yeah, union term.
How great is that
in.
expression? That is a great
I got to
expression.
bang in today.
Jill, thanks for sharing your experience with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jill. One employee took one day off to find his lost ferret. Took a second day off to mourn the loss of said ferret. And then he took a third day off to celebrate the return of the ferret and pick up medicine for the ferret at the vet's.
Okay, that was an anonymous texter. That was not Reader's Digest.
Texter. That's not from Reader's Digest. Here's one from Reader's Digest. An employee was bowling the game of his life and couldn't make it to work. How about that one?
Okay, fine.
Yep.
Linda in Scituate. I love saying Scituate. Hello. Welcome to the show, Linda. Hi.
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 Well, I was just calling to say I don't do this as an adult because I learned that lesson back when I was 10 and growing up in North Dakota, and I did not want to go out. It was brutally cold one winter day, so I faked a stomach ache and took it really far until I ended up having my appendix out.
Oh,
and I was
no.
actually fine.
Oh, no. Oh, Linda. That's terrible. Oh, my God.
Wait a second. That is not possible.
I could see it.
Oh, it's possible.
That really happened?
It just says they press your lower abdomen and you scream and say it hurts like hell. Isn't that how it happens, Linda?
That is exactly how it happened. And the surgeon was a friend of my parents, and I could tell the way he looked at me afterward, no, there was absolutely nothing wrong with me.
That is an incredible story. Linda, thank you. You sound totally credible, too. Thank you. Anonymous texter says, I ran out of total, and I had to eat 12 bowls of another leading brand of cereal. That's because the ad says to get the same nutrition, you have to eat 12 bowls. That's actually a very good one, anonymous texter.
What's the 2025 Smug Mug slogan? Do you know what that was?
No, that was someone suggesting. Don't read that. Okay, Margot in New Hampshire,
right.
you're next on Boston Public Radio. That would be with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Hi.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're excellent.
It's Margot from Hancock.
Oh, Margot. Who's from
hi.
Hancock? You have to say when you say that. Who's from Hancock, Margot, besides you?
My friend Sy Montgomery.
Sy Montgomery. Okay, Margot, what's up?
So I don't use any excuse. My motto is stay mysterious and just say, I can't come in. I can't do it.
How come no one has said that?
Dinner party invitation, and no is a complete sentence in my book.
There you go.
By the way, that
Keep
is
it
one of the
vague.
lines of the month. No is a complete sentence. Why do you need an excuse?
right.
You're an adult.
Margot, you're a woman of mystery.
Well, and
That's
also
right.
a grown-up. If you're talking to another grown-up and you can't come in, that should be enough. I can't come in.
Yeah.
Trust me. No is a complete sentence. Margot, that was fabulous. Well, we just talked to Sy. Hello to you, Margot. It's
Okay.
great to talk to you out of Hancock, New Hampshire.
An employee got stuck in the
she goes.
blood pressure machine
So
at
this is
the
a good one.
grocery store.
That's a really good one.
Couldn't get out.
That's a really good one. Do you ever use that, by the way? Do you ever use that?
Oh, the things they sell at CVS?
Not sell. You go to a lot of Walgreens
Oh,
and
they
CVS's.
do. That's right. They have them
and
there.
the problem with that, not that it's our topic, do you know how tight, you ever done that? You ever done one of those? They are so tight, you think it's going to crush your bicep
it
kind
does.
of thing.
It does. Yeah, they are really tight. Well, that's
Then
how
you
they
can't go to work.
They can't go to work. That's right. That's
You're
what happens
trapped
to the person.
in the blood pressure machine.
They had to call, I've fallen, but I can't
Can we
get
talk
up.
about what Margot said for a second?
Mm-hmm.
That is the most interesting part of this whole discussion. Why is it, if you're a responsible employee and you call your boss, you didn't just start, you've worked there for years, you're a good worker, why isn't "I just can't come in today" enough? Why do you have to give it any excuse? She's totally right. I'm not coming in. That's it. Bye.
Would you ever do that? I would never do that.
But why shouldn't you? My question is, why shouldn't you be able to do that if you have a track record of being responsible, doing your work? It's adult to adult. You're not subservient to your employer.
There's no excuse there. This whole segment is about excuses.
No, I know what the segment is about, Margaret.
So
I mean, in real life, she is saying if she doesn't want to go to work, she calls in and says, "I'm not coming in," or "Don't want to go to a party. I'm not coming in." That's the end of the discussion.
Okay. Zoe just texted
Obviously,
and
that
said,
did
"Thank
nothing
you, Jim.
for him.
I'll be taking the next 2 weeks off."
Well, actually, that's
End
not
of
working,
story.
Zoe. I meant to tell you it's actually a horrible idea. John in Lakeville, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show, John. Hi. John, you got to wait because whenever Marjorie's laughing, she can't get it out of her system. Read the text and then John will get to you.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is anonymous texter. This isn't really related to calling in sick, the person says, but rather coming up with things for the confessional booth if you're a Catholic and go to confession. My mother always used to confess that she stole a shovel until one day the priest said, "Marcia, what are you doing with all of those shovels?"
That's a very good line. John in Lakeville. You got to wait for that, John. Hi, how are you?
Sorry, John.
What's up, John? What's yours?
Hey, sometimes it's not always about an original excuse. My wife and I, when we were married, we are married, but we used to do what was called a Neener Day. A Neener Day meant you weren't really sick. You were both calling in sick to work so you could just spend the day together and enjoy each other's company.
Oh, that's very nice.
A nice little take a break day. Yeah. And, the last person that hangs up the phone, and then you start singing Neener, or we're not going to work today, And it was a very simple little thing. But the classic is sometimes something real happens within a couple days of that Neener Day.
You're screwed.
And I remember my wife one time, she has her hand over the receiver of the phone. She's talking to her boss and saying, "What the bleep was the excuse the last time for the Neener?"
That's a very good point. Hey, before you go, one of our coworkers,
romantic.
Aiden, wants to know, what's your excuse, speaking of excuses, for forgetting you were married? What was that there, John?
That was just a mistake.
Just a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. John, thank you very much for the call. Now, Jared, who is often absent from work, what do you use as your excuse, Jared, for not showing up at GBH?
Well, I think you can go one of two ways. You can either make up some hugely outlandish story, like a hot air balloon fell on your house and it took them all day to remove the parachute, or we can't lie. None of us can lie anymore because your life is on Instagram. You can't have COVID because people can hear you.
That's a very good point.
You can't lie about anything.
Well, also,
you can't lie about traffic because then they can check that and make sure that a moving truck really didn't get storrowed.
Well, there's also another thing. It's like the John who just called, who forgot he was married for a second there. He made a very good point. Once you lie, you have to remember what the lie was so that when you really are sick or really can't go to work, you don't do the same lie kind of thing, which sort of blows your cover. So
it's too exhausting.
In any case, when you were here before, we ran out of time, so you didn't have time to tell us what you're doing at 2 o'clock. So what are you doing at 2 o'clock?
At 2 o'clock, we're having Uzo Aduba on the show. People know Uzo Aduba for being in Orange is the New Black and in treatment, but may not realize that she grew up in Massachusetts and she grew up here, went to Boston University to study the arts, and so she has just issued her first memoir, which is all talking about her growing up here and really how meaningful her mother was in her life. Her mother, who was a Nigerian immigrant, and how they raised them with their values. Her very tight-knit family. It's a beautiful story.
Oh,
so,
lovely.
You actually tomorrow, I know we usually do tomorrow, you have somebody on that people may have heard of. Who's your guest tomorrow?
We are speaking with former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney.
Wow, that's great. Ahead of what?
Good
you should
for
explain and promote your other deal.
So she's in town for the Boston Speaker Series. I did an interview with her last night. We'll do it again tonight. And she she has a lot to say about the Republican Party, and we've heard over the last few days her saying that even maybe it's time for another party because she doesn't recognize the GOP that she was raised in, literally raised in, of course, by her father, Dick Cheney.
Wow. Well, we can't wait to hear today's or tomorrow's, or nor tomorrow's. Jared, good to see you. Take care. Be well.
Thank you very much,
Bowen.
Jared. A couple of quick ones before we go. An employee called in to say she was bitten by a duck. Listen to this. The host of Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Culture Show with Jared is next. Before we go, I want to mention 3 events marking the 50th anniversary of Boston segregation. Taking place at BPL's Rab Hall, Copley Square, Saturday, September 28th. Go to bostondesegregation.org to register. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all